quoi me répondre en me voyant si malheureux. Non, ce n'est pas la fin du monde, ce n'est que la fin de nous deux. Ça pleure aussi un homme, ça oublie sa fierté, aussi fragile qu'un môme. On a laissé tomber, qu'il soit le roi de Rome ou le gitan du coin. Ça pleure aussi un homme quand il a du chagrin.
Un enfant qui vient de perdre, pour un amour qui le déchire. Un homme un jour, ça devient faible, mais sans jamais oser
Thank you for the follow.
ça peut avoir des cheveux gris. Ça pleure aussi un homme, ça oublie sa fierté, aussi fragile qu'un homme. T'as laissé
Lá vem o Zé.
qu'il soit le roi de Rome.
Ô Zé, você é assim, um careca pra mim. E quando eu te vejo, seus olhos, seu carecão, me guiam pela escuridão. Ô careca, tô aqui, pô, tô aqui, karma. Tá com tá com o pincel na boca, bem danado. Danado.
El Padrão.
Beijo, Zé. Eu botei a colinha aqui do lado, agora eu tô vendo quem que comenta e quem não comenta. Toma.
Yep, Ice Padrão.
Ou le clochard des foins, c'est le rocher d'un homme. Quand il a dû
Top. Bravo. Bravo, bravo. Merci Nino. Merci.
Ah, t'es pas venu pour rien, toi, hein?
C'est un bel organe.
Ouais.
Ay, ay, ay! Yes. Good music to dance to, but yeah, yeah.
Ça va.
C'est bien?
Ouais, il tu l'as bien aussi, ouais.
Parfait, la reverb, elle est pas de trou là. La balance, parfait.
Ah non, non, c'est super.
Son est nickel.
On lance. Ouais.
Sa main, elle fait ça, et elle glisse tout le temps, elle s'arrête pas.
Et souple. Ça force.
Difficile. Mais tu regardes jamais ton manche quand tu joues?
Si, si.
Bah non, pas bon. Non, c'est moi, des fois. À un moment, il me regardait, il était comme ça. Et il me regardait et ouais. Putain. Est-ce que tu nous ferais une chanson un peu que tu as écrite, que tu as composée, de l'album, de...
Ouais, mais je peux faire une chanson, ben, la dernière chanson, je peux te faire, je sais pas moi,
Keep
ou
up the
Alléluia,
good work.
ou Encore Bravo, ou je sais pas.
Tu m'as dit qu'elle était tu l'avais fait en français, c'est limite.
Ouais, en français, mais je peux te la faire en français, bien sûr.
Ouais.
Donc voilà, c'est une chanson que je vais vous interpréter. La chanson que je vais vous interpréter, en fait, c'est les séries de mon dernier single, qui est sorti il y a quelques mois, pas très longtemps. Et je vais vous faire une avant-première.
Avant animation to
Première.
finish.
Moi, les yeux fermés.
An animation to finish. And I don't need distraction.
Bro's been cooking, and I got something new for you too. If you can't tell by now, I love Arcane, and I've always wanted to write a song about one of my favorite characters from the entire series, and possibly the coolest supervillain of all time. If you disagree with me, fight me. None other than Silco. Man, I can't believe how compelling his character is, and even when I first laid eyes on him in the trailer, I was like, bro, what did Riot Games pour into his character? Whatever that ingredient is, it is potent. I love it. We don't know what's going to happen in Season 2 yet, we can only imagine, but let this be some fuel for your imagination, and if you think it fits in Season 2, tag Riot Games. Long story short, Silco is awesome, he inspired me to write a song. Let me know if you want me to finish it. This is the idea.
God-forsaken, blood dripping from a stone cold blade as I carve my name. My hope was taken, I'm cut off from all the love I crave. Am I worth this pain? Hiding my tears, caught in the jaws of fear, torn away, knowing you can't save me. Oh, it's too late, already got poison in my veins. Feel the silver venom rushing to my brain. Got me like, oh.
You might remember me from this song,
Jump in the night,
or this song, or this song. Bro's been cooking, and I got some
Hey,
The soldier broke the witch's magic bottle. He turned into a tree with a little flower at the tip of his nose. The witch's magic potions are very magical. It only takes a little to turn the core into a fresh apple. The old witch became young again after eating the apple. The water god was fascinated by her. He's going to follow along in search of the magic sword. Because the water god cannot live without water, he can only soak in the old witch's barrel. They came to a river after a long walk. The old king picked up a stone and threw it at him. Huge piranhas fly out of the water and bite the rocks in seconds. A volunteer water god can subdue the piranha. I didn't realize the water god was no match for the piranha. Everyone rested by the river. The old king put his arm in the water and caught some piranhas. He roasted it for everyone's dinner. Then Mark caught a rabbit for Bella. Bella looks at the lovely rabbit. She was so happy. Then the rabbit's eyes, which Bella held in her hand, suddenly changed, so frightened that Bella threw herself to the ground. It turns out the rabbit was the queen. With a flick of her hand she summoned a large sword. The queen stabbed Bella fiercely. The soldier broke the witch's magic.
It was ammunition. It was old ammo that I was never planning to use, so I used it for that video and I put it in the toilet.
Never do the cake smash prank.
Money! I know that this right here might seem like a very unassuming prank, but there's a couple different reasons why this is a horrible idea. This is a TikTok video that I was tagged in, where it's obviously this girl's birthday, she's about to blow out the candles, and her friend grabs her head and shoves it into the cake. This is something we see all the time online. However, instead of her popping back up and laughing, she just lays here. And the entire reason for her laying here is there's something hidden in the cake known as a wooden dowel. When you make a cake that has multiple layers, usually they're going to end up crumbling under their own weight. To provide some extra structural integrity, what the bakers will do is add wooden dowels to hold it up. But as you can imagine, if you smash someone's face into a cake and it has wooden dowels in it, it can easily puncture into their eyes or other vital spots. Can't show photos here, but this has happened several times and it's well documented online. So if you're going to do this prank, make sure that the cake doesn't have wooden dowels, but honestly, just don't do this prank in general.
Never do the cake smash prank.
Well, that individual going to
What you
jail.
are about to see in this video is ancient Inca technology. The artifacts in this video are known as ancient Inca whistling jars. Each whistling jar imitates the sound of the animal it resembles. It is said that the ancient Incas have mastered many different types of sound technology.
Hey Mom, what's the difference between a peeping Tom and a pickpocket? Well, one of them snatches your watch and the other one watches your snatch.
Oh my god, you guys are cleaning that. I'm glad you're cleaning
Hey Mom.
So stupid, but
Where
funny.
did a kid get this kind of money?
Stupid yet funny. Why is that? Man, it's me. Alright. Alright. Oh. That went up. Okay. The thing I doesn't understand when it comes to Twitch, yeah? Small content creators, I would say small streamers, and even get views. But anyways, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is. Alright, so I'm streaming on YouTube, Kick, and Twitch. Okay. Nice. I could stream to D Live. Don't know what that will. Did I? Not. Alright, so got a lot of things to look at.
Paca.io. This is a free standalone UV tool that allows you to take advantage of its automated system to manage your UVs based on the technology of the folks at the 3D.io's free UV plugins. And of course, this is now available for everyone as it is totally free, which simply means that you can use it for anything you want. The folks at 3D.io has also mentioned that Paca.io is available to everyone to do with whatever they please. So whether you're trying to use this for commercial or personal projects, you can simply go ahead and check it out. And for those who like to download this, you can simply go over to the link in the description where you can download this for both Windows and Mac and start creating your beautiful stuff. The cool thing with the Paca.io is this, that you can automate work easily. This has an intuitive UV management tool and it simply guarantees very cool quality and reduces that drag time that you have to spend when managing your UVs. Instead of dealing with UV clusters, you can now automate this process and get done with it. This also has a couple of interesting plugins which you can download and work with, and these plugins, like we mentioned earlier, are totally free. So whether you want to get the ones for Blender, 3D Studio Max, Unreal Engine, then you can of course go ahead and check it out. And today we're going to dive right in and explore this beautiful tool, especially if you want to get it and see what you can get out of it. So with Paca.io simply opened right here, what you get is this simple stuff. So you can choose to drag and drop a file in, and this supports like a huge set of files. So whether you're working with OBJ, FBX, GLB files, you can simply work with them. So what I'm going to do is just drag and drop a file in here. So this file that we're working with is gotten off Sketchfab, and a huge shout out to the creator for this. I'm going to link this in the description as well. And what you have is pretty simple. So like we mentioned earlier, this is a packing tool, and this is definitely going to be super useful for those who have already cut their UVs, or probably, you know, you've just done a haphazard job at cutting your UVs and you just don't want to spend that time packing it. So what you can do with this is simple. So with everything here, we can simply click on the word pack, and this would automatically pack it. If we would like to do a full rotation of this pack, which adds a 180 degrees rotation to an angle, we can do that as well. So we can pack this as much as we want. We can also choose to play with the rescaling. So maybe we want some things not to rescale, we can do that. If we like to play with the combine as well, we can also do that too. So this is beautiful. The same thing can be said for the padding. So probably we want to get a padding of, let's say, 3. Let's actually go in and dial these all the way down. All right, so let's say we want to get a padding of 3, we can click and automatically we're also getting that. And in terms of sizes as well, say for example to each UV tiles you want them to be 1024 or probably 512, or maybe you want to max it all the way out to 248, you can also do that. So you do have options of doing this. So we'll go in and say we want this to be 248, and we can simply click, and this becomes a 2K UV tile. And another interesting thing that you can now do with this, despite the fact that you can do all of that, is packing this based off a UV tile. So let's say for example we have this beautiful piece, and for this particular piece that we have here, we want all of these to exist as a UDIM. What we can do is to go over to tile UVs, and we can choose how much of a UDIM we want. So we could do like a 2x2, or we could do a 3x3, or maybe a 4x4. And once we have that, we can click on the word pack, and automatically we have it. So in this case, you can now create independent tiles for different objects. And the more packings you click, the more variations you get. There's also a couple of options and menu sets that exist here. So if you click on the plus button, you can go in and import something else. And if you want to deal with the looks, you can. So you can also go over to the looks section, and there's a couple of looks you can, you know, play with this and see how things would look like. So again, if we would like to scale this all the way up and click on the word pack, and we have that. This is set to 2K. If we would like to scale this all the way to 4K, which I believe should be 4096, we can also go ahead and scale this all the way up. We can do the same UV thing that we did. Say we'll like this 1 2x1, and we're going to have 2 different stuff. We can flip between the UV or the 3D model, and this way we can now see what we have right here. Now in this situation, if you also want to play with the looks some more, you can of course go ahead and do it, and the tiling can also be controlled from here. This is just one useful tool I believe a lot of people can take advantage of, especially if you're into UVs and probably you get to work with multiple UVs and you don't want to deal with the whole idea of cutting these UVs and then tiling them and packing them. You need a tool to actually get this thing going. You can just simply focus on cutting the UVs however you choose, and then come over to an app like this and get it arranged properly the way it should. There's also a manager tool that exists here, and for UI there's also the dark and the light UI. So this is something I wouldn't recommend, but the dark one looks pretty cool. There's also again some navigation styles. Depending on what you want to do, you do have these things here. And once you're ready, you can proceed to export your file by hitting Ctrl and S on the keyboard, and you can export this file with the UV tiles that you've just created. So from simple to complex models, the Packer.io seems to be an amazing tool for allowing and helping artists pack their UVs with a single click without the hassles of dialing several buttons and dealing with so much technicalities. So this is it. Amazing things from the folks at UV Packer, and of course if you like to get this and probably you want to start playing with it, then you can simply go over to the link in the description and check it out. It is quite impressive to see that this is available for Windows and also for Mac, and by every means if you need the Blender, Unreal Engine or 3D Studio Max plugin, you can go ahead and grab this. In terms of the payment for these is totally free. Like we mentioned earlier, you can use this for literally anything you want, both commercial and also personal. So this is it. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section, and of course a huge shout out to the folks at UV Packer for making this possible. And if you like this video or you like something from this, you can go ahead and give a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And until I see you guys in the next one, peace.
Generate figures as much as these, or even these. Dedicating only 1 hour a day, Monday through Friday, without having to risk any of your money, starting with
What if one day you woke up in another world, living for almost 100 years, in a life eating nothing but fruits, being friends with nature spirits, and having a home called a forest? Well, it seems like that's exactly what happened to our main protagonist in this story. According to Aesir, the life of an elf is pretty much the ideal slow life. Although at first it seems like the perfect life anyone could ask for, as time passes by, Aesir starts to get bored of it. After living like this for 120 years, the High Elf now sets himself off in search of stimulation and thrills. Now that he is already fed up with this kind of life, he starts to realize that it is indeed not the life he wanted to live for the rest of his elf life. As it turns out, Aesir has all the memories of his previous life, which by the way was a world filled with rich products of culture and civilization. That's why he can easily tell that this world he is currently in is scarce of the good stuff. Knowing that the other High Elves don't have any idea what the world has to offer, considering the only thing they have known and love is the forest, Aesir just can't take it anymore. With the knowledge that elves live for more than 1,000 years, and once their physical form perishes, their spirit goes on to linger in nature until the end of the world itself, Aesir, who has played the part for over 100 years, has finally reached his limits. Since his stomach can't keep up on eating fruits for another 800 years, or even until the world ends, he now finally decides to go out there, see, eat, and experience new things. And for him to kickstart that vision, he went on to cut his long silky hair. For some reason, his chest feels lighter now, so he starts to feel much more excited than before. Elves live deep in the forest, in the overwhelmingly vast sea of trees, Pula, so Aesir has no idea what to expect past the elven barrier. However, despite the nervousness, he can't deny the fact that the thrill makes him more excited. Considering there isn't anyone he wants to give his farewells to, he immediately moves out to start his journey into the real world. As soon as he stepped out of the forest, a series of unfortunate events started to bombard him, one after another. But still, he enjoys every challenge like it's a fun game, since along the way he was able to get his hands on some good items like wolf fangs and claws. Aesir started to wonder what kind of items he would be able to make out of them. As a result, he started having thoughts on actually learning some craftsmanship first. But before that, as he reached the end of the valley, he finally got his eyes locked on the first city on sight. Immediately, without wasting any time, he went on to rush to the city gates, only to find out that he needed money to get inside. Since he doesn't have any copper or silver coins in hand, Aesir has no other choice but to wish for a miracle to come by. As he loses hope of ever entering the said city, a girl then calls for him, asking if she can borrow Aesir for a moment. Although confused, Aesir still went on to listen attentively to what the girl had to say. Surprisingly, it seems like the girl is curious to know if Aesir happens to be a high elf. Shocked at first, Aesir ended up frozen in place. But after a while, he then realizes that a high elf appears to be draped in a shimmering light. This is caused by their soul's immortality, so there is no doubt why the girl immediately knew Aesir was one of the high elves, considering his overflowing aura. Now that she has finally confirmed Aesir as one, the girl then goes on to wonder what is a high elf like Aesir doing in a human city like this one. Without even trying to hide it, Aesir went on to straightforwardly state that he just got bored of the forest and that is why he thought of taking a look around. At first, Aesir thought that the girl would be awkward with him, but surprisingly, it seems like she isn't at all. In fact, she even sees Aesir as a noble one that she should give her respect to. Then suddenly, the girl introduced herself as Irina, a fellow elf who sees herself as Aesir's personal assistant from now on. Although Aesir appreciates Irina's kind offer to give her assistance, he assures her that there's no need to worry at all. But since Irina is the one who helped him pass through the gates, he has no choice but to stick around with her until they get inside. Before they enter, the gate's guard informs Aesir of the city rules. As he reads through it, he immediately understands every bit, as it is easy to comprehend. As soon as the signing of papers is already done, Aesir, Irina, and Irina's party immediately enter the city of Vistcourt. When they were inside, Irina asked Aesir if he had any plans moving forward. If he hasn't yet, the party would recommend that he register himself as an adventurer to obtain a form of identification. However, as Aesir thinks of it, it's really not the kind of thing he wants to do at all. It seems like he has plans on making something out of those forest wolf parts he got a while ago, and for him to be able to do such a thing, he needs to find a good blacksmith first. Although there is someone in Irina's mind she can recommend, she somehow can't take the fact that this particular blacksmith is a dwarf. As Aesir thinks about it deeply, he suddenly remembers that according to the elven legend, dwarves ruin the sanctity of nature by stealing fire away and locking it inside the furnace. That's why myths or legends, dwarves and elves just don't get along at all. However, it seems like that's not a problem for Aesir at all. In fact, he is even excited that he gets to see a dwarf for the first time. This made everyone at Irina's party, even Irina herself, shocked. But since Aesir's decision is already fixed, they have no choice but to agree with it. But before all that, Aesir went on to give Irina an apwa fruit, which is considered an elf's favorite food. Since Irina has helped him get into town, this was Aesir's token of appreciation of some sort. As a result, Irina's decision of not coming with Aesir to the dwarf's blacksmithing shop has now changed, so she goes on to tell him to rest up for the night as they will visit the smith the next day. The next morning, Aesir immediately went to the blacksmith's shop just like he planned. With a huge smile painted on his face, it is pretty apparent that he is definitely excited about this thing one way or another. As he got inside the shop, he was shocked when nobody greeted him back. By the looks of it, it seems like the smith is quite busy with his thing at the moment. After waiting for a couple of minutes, the blacksmith finally arrives, welcoming Aesir with the warmest greetings. However, as soon as he sees Aesir's lengthy ears, the dwarf's expression suddenly changes. He immediately sets things straight with Aesir, saying that he will not sell anything to an elf like Aesir ever in his life. So to avoid any misunderstanding, Aesir went on to state that he was not here today to buy anything. Instead, he wants the dwarf to forge him an item he has envisioned in his mind. Immediately, Aesir went on to show the dwarf the forest wolf's fang he was able to get a while ago. Since he doesn't want any parts of it to go to waste, he's asking the dwarf to make something great out of it. However, it seems like the dwarf doesn't know how to craft it at all, considering a fang this size isn't really the kind of thing an amateur could work with. But instead of looking for another blacksmith, Aesir went on to press on complimenting the dwarf of his skill. After all, he is the best one this town has to offer. As a result, even though the blacksmith isn't really keen on working for an elf like Aesir, he has no choice but to grab this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Knowing that he would not be able to work his hands on this kind of material in the near future, the blacksmith went on to agree to work on it himself. On top of that, he also went on to state that Aesir could make a killing as an adventurer, so he might as well consider entering the guild himself. However, it seems like Aesir is not ready to embark on that journey yet. For now, he is planning to craft knives and whatnot like a blacksmith, to the point that he is willing to learn how for the next 10 to 20 years. Hearing this shocked the dwarf, as this was the first time an elf got so genuinely interested in doing such a thing. However, it seems like Aesir has already decided and is now ready to start his journey as a blacksmith elf. Of course, it was natural that Irina was shocked by this sudden decision. After all, elves and dwarves aren't supposed to get along. And now an elf, a high one to be specific, is going to work in a dwarf shop is just weirdly different. However, it seems like Aesir doesn't get why it wouldn't be a problem, since he is doing this because he wants to make some money on the side. With a big stomach like his, having extra cash in his pocket is indeed something he needs to consider. Aside from that, he is also planning on paying Irina back for all the expenses she did to accommodate him in the city. But that is not what bothers Irina the most. The fact that Aesir will now be covered with an iron stench, which is something that frightens the trees, makes him less of an elf from now on. Fast forward, a year has already passed. Irina and her team, White Lake, come by to the blacksmithing shop to buy and repair equipment. It is also quite a fruitful year for the shop, since they've quite more customers than usual. Aside from that, it seems like Aesir has also improved a lot with his smithing skills, but it seems like he is allowed to hammer out nails for now. In addition to that, metal shortage is also one of the things that is causing a lot of grief to the customers. While Aesir is busy with his job, Irina and the others are out on a long-term mission. Since he is planning to move out at the inn, Aesir is waiting for the others to come back to tell them his fixed decision. A few days passed, and a bell on the door made Aesir smile, knowing that this was definitely Irina and the others. However, to his surprise, it seems like something bad has happened to the party. According to one of Irina's comrades, they have received a request from the town of Garalet, which is about 2 weeks away. However, the party wasn't informed that the Garalet's river had been contaminated. The water spirit there is out of control, and the city has asked them to end its curse. But while the fish are dying in greater numbers, the surrounding vegetation is unaffected. Based on this fact, what's happening in Garalet's river is not a curse, but a pollution. Garalet is a new town established where rich mineral veins were discovered 10 years ago. So that means all of the harm caused by the mine's pollution is being blamed on the water spirit. Aesir then went on to ask what kind of person the Lord of Garalet is. According to Irina's comrade, he is someone who is very eager to expand the mining operations, which simply means that he already knows what the problem is, yet he is still keeping a blind eye. As a result, Irina and her team are now handed the burden of finding a solution to the problem that can only be solved by Garalet's higher-ups. But Aesir would not deny the fact that Irina did the right thing, befriending the water spirit as much as possible, since it would surely prevent the pollution from having any influence over the world. Although Aesir is willing to help them with this matter the best he can, he still wants the group to talk to one more person other than him. Knowing that dwarves have been working with metal since time immemorial, if anyone, they'd be the most well-versed in the harmful effects metals can have. With that being said, they'd need to seek Master Rockmuncher, aka the blacksmith's help. Upon telling him every detail, the blacksmith offered to investigate the matter himself. At first, Aesir thought it wasn't really necessary, but in the end, he went on to give up, considering the blacksmith insisted on doing it again and again. Despite the fact that this matter could result in the inflation of metal prices, Aesir couldn't care less, considering he is a high elf living in the world of men, so he will do what only a knife ears can do. While the dwarves work on his investigation, Aesir and Irina's comrade Martina then visit the site themselves. When they got there, they saw Kraeus all weak and frail from holding down the fort the best he could. Upon Aesir's observation, this place is no longer hospitable to humans. That is why, as soon as Irina returns, he will immediately take everyone somewhere safer. When he finally got his eyes locked on Irina, he immediately jumped in to have a noble discussion with the water spirit. As soon as he tags in, the spirit's tail then follows to flash in. Long ago, the indigenous people who lived in the area respected nature deeply, but one day, this land was invaded. The tribe survivors would be integrated into the new culture, but they never gave up their faith. However, as time passed by, those who opposed the mining projects were exiled. As a result, the people started letting the greedy people take over their land fully, which eventually caused the fish to die and the water sullied. With that said, the spirit has been angered to the point that she is even willing to wash everyone away to stop the pollution from happening any further. However, Aesir made her realize that if she did such a thing, a lot of innocent people would be affected as well. Those mothers who just nurture their babies, and fathers who work tirelessly for their family. When the spirit finally realizes how grave her punishment to the people is, the town of Garalet is saved from a supposedly big disaster. On the other hand, the Blacksmith Guild is also working on a solution for the mine. Aside from that, the true cause of the incident was then cleared up to the public, and Irina's team successfully completed their request. The noble lord was also held accountable for the issues with the mine and dismissed from his position, and the indigenous tribe's exile was nullified. 3 years later, Aesir is still smithing, but this time, instead of working only on nails, he is now allowed to work on weapons and armor. Aside from that, he also happened to meet a boy named Astor, who he thought would make a good adventurer. With that keen eye for weapons, Aesir is looking forward to seeing him again one day. Then, 10 years have passed. Master Rockmuncher is now getting married, and it seems like Aesir will take over his business from now on. Irina's party, the White Lake, got to the very top as well, now declared as a 7-star ranked team. But despite this success, the team decided to disband to work on their individual endeavors. In addition to that, the very first person Aesir met in this town, Rodner, has now risen through the ranks, becoming captain of the guard. And that boy Astor has now developed into a warrior in his own right. So much has happened in the past 10 years, and the life he had lived for 150 years prior doesn't even compete. Now that Aesir's master finally leaves to start his life in the Dwarf Kingdom, the two bid each other the most emotional farewell there is. Although Aesir was supposed to take over the business, he decided to pursue other things and learn new skills like sorcery. Now that he has finally ended his chapter as a blacksmith, he will now start a new journey in the royal capital. At the royal capital of Ludria, Warfield, Aesir finally arrives. The royal capital is located right in the center of the kingdom of Ludria, so it is pretty obvious that it is a lot busier than Viscourt. In this city, there are a lot of schools of swordsmanship too. 3 of the best are termed the 3 Disciples. Different styles of swordsmanship are learned in these schools, some of which are the Ludrian Kingdom style, Lodrin Great Sword style, and Grand style. As he starts to contemplate these things, a girl suddenly shows off her sword style, completely shocking Aesir to the core. As a result, he immediately asks the girl to teach him her style, as he is willing to pay tuition and even do the chores for her. Although he doesn't know the name of the style the girl practices, he wants to be the one who wields it. As a result, she wants to take him to her dojo, with the thought that Aesir would surely change his mind when he saw her training place. Yosogiryu's dojo is one of the sword schools in the kingdom that actually ended up getting ruined over time. So the style she was using a while ago isn't something the school has taught her. Instead, it was one of the few things that her father's teachings had left for her. But learning their style may only draw undue attention from the Lodrin Kingdom, so the king thinks that it would be better for Aesir to leave now. However, it seems like Aesir is very much decided on this one. So Keiha, the girl's name as it turns out, doesn't have any choice but to give Aesir what he is asking for. As a result, things started getting really busy very quickly. Since Keiha's mother is suffering from some chest illness, Aesir went on to find medicinal herbs in the forest. Aside from that, Aesir also started making connections in the city as much as he could, as he knew it would really come in handy at some point down the line. Now that Aesir has so much to do, he doesn't have any time to learn sorcery anymore, but he doesn't complain at all, as his training finally began. As time passes by, Aesir realizes that swordsmanship is just like smithing. One should make adjustments here and there, little by little, until one is done. Half a year later, Kreus dropped by, and let's just say Keiha didn't stand a chance on the noble adventurer. At this moment, Kreus tells them that the only thing that would make a great swordsman is to experience the real world. As a result, Keiha ended up asking Aesir for a favor to allow her to become an adventurer. But before he does, he tells her to wait as he sets an armor she can take on her journey. Aside from that, Aesir is also asking her to use his home in Viscourt as a base of operations. 3 years later after Keiha left, Aesir has completely renovated dojo doing his usual practice swings alone. He has also been taking care of Keiha's mom and has been living his best peaceful life in this busy city. Every 4 months, Keiha's letter arrives, and based on the story written on the paper, it is safe to say that she is moving higher and higher in her ranks, which makes Aesir quite happy. But what really excites him now is the fact that they were about to see her again after 3 years, and by that time, Keiha would probably be a 7-star high-rank adventurer already. Although that news is something great to hear, Aesir can't deny the fact that Keiha's mother is overly excited about it. Ever since they got that letter, she's been making a feast every single day, in hopes that her daughter might come by anytime soon. Although her cooking is indeed phenomenal, with this many dishes, eating it all feels like torture. However, at the back of Aesir's mind, he can't just possibly let it all go to waste. So as much as he can, he eats it to the very last bite. As a result of this, Aesir desperately hopes Keiha comes back even more every time. And to his surprise, it seems like the girl they have been waiting for has now finally come home. As Keiha enters the gate, she immediately shows off the swordsmanship skills she was able to learn as an adventurer. And Aesir can't deny the fact that the 3 years Keiha spent in the real world weren't spent in vain. In only 3 short years, she has blossomed into a beautiful, breathtaking flower. However, it seems like it wasn't just Keiha who came home, as she even invited Irina to come. As they sat to have a proper discussion, Irina went on to explain what had been happening to the elves these past few years. According to her, a handful of Ludrian nobles have been capturing and enslaving elves, for bragging rights presumably. Hearing this made Aesir wonder why it was so easy for a man to capture those elves, considering they should have knowledge of basic adventurer skills, like fighting for instance. However, it seems like the common elves who live outside the Great Sea of Trees aren't really accustomed to battle the way Irina and Aesir are. After all, being able to commune with the spirits is one thing, but doing that in combat is something else entirely. So it is easy to say that it is hardly impossible for humans to capture elves through military force alone. So in short, these nobles have been raiding elf settlements in their territory with private armies. Since these elven settlements are so insular and closed off, most people probably don't even notice. What's worse is that the captured elves are tortured in many ways possible. And since their senses are disoriented by drugs injected into them, they can't form any connection to the spirits. This fact somehow makes Irina shiver in anger. But as of now, she can't do anything but ask for Aesir's help on the matter. As per Irina's investigation, those responsible for this matter are those important nobles who have the whole eastern region under their domain. So it is safe to say that the kingdom knows what's happening, yet they are still keeping a blind eye to it. Aside from that, owning an elf slave is becoming more popular to the point that elf slavery can already be legal in due time. As a result, simply sneaking in and rescuing the captured elves won't be enough at this point. So in order to ensure elves never have to suffer anything like this again, Aesir and the elves must carve pain into the very kingdom itself. For them to be able to do so, Irina and Aesir plan to ask the other elves in the forest to emigrate, since if they do, monsters will breed out of control, overflow, and spill out of the forest, causing great problems for the kingdom itself. Although this is such a sudden plan, Irina and Aesir think this would be the perfect thing to do now. However, that also means that Aesir will have to bid Keha goodbye as well. After giving each other quite an emotional message, Irina and Aesir then went on their way. After traveling for a good while, Aesir finally made it to the heart of eastern Lubdria, inside a fertile forest within the Marquis' private army. In total, the preparations for this plan took half a year. After all, arranging the elven emigration and locating all of the enslaved elves is no easy task, so they couldn't possibly do anything rash until everything was all prepared in advance. Although the thought of attacking the noble's territory did come across Aesir's mind, asking for help from that water spirit, but in the end, he ended up realizing that wouldn't work at all. He even thought of creating a disastrous event. However, he knows to himself that wouldn't solve the problem at all. What he needs to do now is think of a spectacle as grand as possible, yet the actual damage is minimal. As a result, he ended up using the land spirit to let the people in the territory experience something terrifying. Using the tremor as a signal, elven adventurers moved in to rescue their captive brethren, and the elves began a mass emigration out of the forest. The number was around 8,000 elves in total. So in no time, the forest will soon be flooded by monsters, and the country will likely issue a formal apology. Only when that formal apology is carved into history, that elves can be sure no tragedy like this will ever happen again. Irina will be the main point of contact for negotiations. However, it seems like there is still one more problem. If any of the rescued elves were with a child, half-elves could cause problems in the future of the disasters they invite. As a result, Aesir even thought of taking care of them just in case. Either way, he knows that he can no longer stay in this country, so he starts to question himself. Where should he go next? The chilly radiance of his steel blade helps him put his tempestuous thoughts at ease somewhat. Just for a moment, he somehow allowed himself to stop thinking and slowly swing his sword. After finally deciding to leave Ludria, Aesir starts off his journey on the road once again. After a couple of days, he finally reached the shore. South of the kingdom of Ludria is Palogia, and even further south is where he has finally arrived, the Republic of Velestrica, facing the sea. It is not a very large country, but it is very successful in maritime trade. It is ruled by a parliament of nobles and a sovereign they elect. However, it seems like Palogia and Velestrica people are having a fight over the border, causing Ludria to be the only country Palogia can rely on delivering export goods. That said, Ludria is technically far wealthier than Palogia in many ways. The idea that one may struggle to obtain basic needs didn't cross Aesir's mind in Ludria, but when he got to Palogia, his perspective on life drastically changed. Thankfully, along the way, he was able to meet great people who helped him go through his travels. Making these people his motivation, Aesir finally reached his destination. Now that he is finally in Velestrica, all that Aesir can think of is eating nothing but seafood. After the guards confirmed that he was not a spy, Aesir was then allowed to roam around the town of Sarot, where seafood is definitely good. Immediately, Aesir visits a tavern and instantly orders big platters of food. As soon as he took the first bite, his soul literally left his body for how good the food tasted so much. However, when his long-awaited fish meal is about to arrive, two men start fighting, startling the waitress and causing Aesir's food to go to waste. As a result, Aesir ended up having a fight with one of the men earlier, with an ending of him being called by the tavern owner himself. The two were then scolded for what happened, but eventually they both ended up getting along so much, with a guy whose name is Dries offering to catch Aesir some fish himself to make up for what happened. With that said, even though Aesir just got to the new town a while ago, he came to know 3 people already: the waitress Karina, the fisherman Dries, and the tavern owner Grand. With these 3, Aesir was able to find himself right in the middle of the going-ons in this town. As the night bites, Aesir rests up in his inn room. As he attends to his bruises brought about by the fight earlier, he can't deny the fact that Dries is just an ordinary fisherman. Although Dries has already told him that he worked in a trading company before, Aesir still reminds himself to be careful as much as possible. If he gets himself hurt like this again, he could actively hinder his smithing and dueling skills. The next day, Aesir then went on to visit Dries on his work, and it looks like everyone is having a large commotion once again. As soon as Aesir steps in, everybody starts to shut up when Aesir starts to fight them off one by one. Since Aesir did Dries yet another favor, the fisherman has no choice but to make it up to Aesir no matter what. For today's meal, aside from big slices of fish, Aesir was also served with a wonderfully textured 8-legged octopus, which somehow wrapped up the day for the young man. Other than that, by asking around at the inn and the market, he was informed of everything he needed to know about what was happening in this town. According to the information he has learned, this town sees merchants coming and going in large ships, and fishermen using smaller ships in the surrounding area, and there was a serious conflict over the usage of the harbor between them. The fishermen and the merchants are each backed by a prominent noble family, the Pastelli family, who have been unifying the fishermen for ages. On the other hand, the Tritrine family controls many different merchant companies, including Lorette Trading Co. The two families are meant to cooperate to develop and grow the town. As the town saw more people coming and going to trade, sales of fish increased. The more fish sold, the more money the fishermen made. However, the relationship between the two families began to crack, brought about by the conflicts regarding the size of the shore. With that being said, Dries is something like a leader among the younger fishermen, so they wanted to lynch him out, and Lorette, the guy Dries has fought with the other day, was probably planning to demoralize the fishermen that way. The problem is now, even if lynching is a pretty horrific act, Aesir can't say anyone is fundamentally evil to their very core. After about 4 days in town, Lorette went on to send Aesir an apology letter, asking him to come by to have a talk. However, based on what Aesir has heard, Lorette is quite ruthless and is willing to do anything for the sake of turning a profit. So obviously, Aesir ignores it the best way he can. But it seems like Lorette will not stop until he gets what he wants, and as a result, Aesir has no choice but to fight back. After Aesir caught 10 of Lorette's people, the officials started digging for information from them. What made people wonder is there was no good reason for the entire company to be after his head. That is why, after investigating, the officials found out that Lorette had been harassing the fishermen and had been committing a good amount of fraud on their part. Aside from that, Lorette has also somehow let the entire company down when he started talking about the bad things the company has been doing behind the scenes. As a result, the Tritrine family immediately cut Lorette and his team loose, forcing them to face the consequences on their own. However, in the end, nothing really changed, almost as if it all went exactly according to a script. But on the other hand, Aesir continued to enjoy the food and drink at Grand's Tavern. However, good things must end at some point. Aesir then went on to inform Karina that he would be leaving soon, so the tavern would have no more problem accommodating such a squid enthusiast. Before he leaves, Aesir also manages to realize that Karina has been watching him this whole time, so he speculates that she must have a network of spies all over town. He is not sure if Grand has anything to do with this, but Aesir bet Karina set Lorette up to fail. Until then, this town will remain as it is now, ever developing but not changing too much, so Aesir hopes it will wait for his return. Now that his time in the town of Seafood has finally ended, Aesir is on his way to his next destination, which is the land of sorcery, Odyne. This town is one of the many small countries that make up the Eastern United League. The region was initially called the Azed Empire, but due to some succession dispute, the region has now been divided into countries and states. These small countries avoid being swallowed up by larger powers through their alliance with each other. Odyne was founded as a place to research magic and to train powerful sorcerers who can single-handedly turn the tide of war. With that said, one of Aesir's goals in this country is to learn magic by the end of his trip. Although there is a chance that he might not find someone who can teach him magic, with the letter that he sent Irina, for sure, the adventure elf would get in touch with him somehow. After traveling for a couple of minutes, Aesir finally reached the town of Jampimon, also known as the Stone Titanic, adrift in a sea of gold. Using his license in smithing, Aesir easily got inside the town. As soon as he found the perfect place to stay, a little girl then started touring him inside the inn. After taking a bath, Aesir went on to eat his first dinner of the day, and to his surprise, the food was more than satisfactory. Since he had plans on expanding his name as a smith in this region, he went on to visit one of the country's most known blacksmith guilds. However, it seems like his rank in Ludria doesn't count for as much here, so he has no choice but to improve his design as much as possible. Unsurprisingly, Aesir was able to adjust to the guild's preference, so in the end, he was able to get as many compliments from the blacksmiths in town. The next few days have been busy for Aesir. Upon investigation, the land this United League is on is fertile and his people are pretty wealthy themselves. As he roams around the city, he is guided by Nana, the little girl from the inn. It has already been a week since he got to Jampimon, and it is safe to say that he has been busy working 6 days a week, and his one day off today is spent trying as many sweets as he can. However, despite all this richness, there is still some dark side to the country as many people might not expect. The Draudian army is invading Northern Zair, and the Azed Alliance may end up convening. The Northern Zair is a militaristic, mercenary country, and the Draudians are a nomadic people with a strong cavalry presence. That is why Aesir is now more curious than ever to know every detail about this matter as much as he can. And for him to do just so, he would need to ask the people at the Blacksmith Guild tomorrow. According to the Smiths, the Azed Alliance might end up being convened, but that is still up in the air. All they know for now is that some of the northern countries in the Eastern United League are sending reinforcements to help out Northern Zair. Hearing this made Aesir realize that he might actually have stepped into the middle of a war unintentionally. But instead of worrying that much about it, for now, Aesir focused on working on the spears, polishing them the best way he could. It seems like the next job he got after the spearheads were forging the greatest sword he could manage. After all, price was no object in this region. At this time, he can already forge any kind of sword he wants. The kind of sword he's most familiar with is the single-edged straight sword used by the Yosogiryu school. It seems like wielding the Yosogiryu style focuses his mind entirely. He mostly focuses on the ideal form the sword should be, from its ideal shape, weight, and balance. So obviously, he hasn't forged it just yet. But while he is still searching for it, his heart is ablaze like a furnace. He needs to give form to what he can see in his mind's eye, even if only partly. And the only people who could understand him were his two masters. That and that alone is enough for him. In fact, it may even be more than enough. Everyone else on the planet need only see the results of his method. After all, he knows that it's going to speak for itself once it is finished. Days have passed, and it seems like Aesir is already near to reaching his goals. But of course, it is tiring on his part, considering he has been working tirelessly for 3 weeks straight already. He worked right through his rest days, trying to get that sword to his satisfaction. But the payment was a substantial sum of 10 large gold pieces. Even Nana is worried about him, but Aesir is thankful for it, considering this little girl has been his pillar through all of it. She took good care of him in times of need. Although on their own, these are pretty trivial things, but seeing her do her best to support him kept him motivated. That is why Aesir made sure that when he is up for it, he will definitely take her out for more cake. However, despite all of his efforts, he still feels like he can't get as good as his master Rock Muncher, and he also can't get Keha to wield it for him. So as a result, he can't help but feel a little lonely at some point. At the back of his mind, either of those would have been a greater reward than the gold pieces. Over the 3 days, Aesir keeps lazing around, until he feels like it is already time to get a move on to make sure he is in Odyne when Irina seeks him out. Since the distance from town to town in this region is about 3 days apart by foot, Aesir has no choice but to travel tirelessly as he can't stand his motion sickness when in a carriage. As he finally got his eyes locked on some good-looking apples, he immediately realized that he was already in Ardeno territory, which is a widely known region for its fruits. While he was there, he was able to take down a large boar which ended up cooked to be his delicious dinner. As a reward for his help, Aesir also asks the residents to show him to a watering hole. While he is having a feast, one of the villagers goes on to reveal that there is a village called Palnor between Ardeno and Folca. They use all the water in the riverbanks to dye cloth and tan hides. As Aesir thinks about it, tanning a hide can easily take several months to do properly, so he can probably afford to wait. With that being said, the next morning, he immediately went to start his journey. When he reached Lake Zir, he rode a boat to travel from Folca to Laurent. Lake Zir is a part of the Zir Republic. The trip from Folca to Laurent takes from morning to evening by boat. Although it may seem a lot, it is actually the quickest way to travel across 2 of the towns. Despite the fact that he has come a long way to reach Odyne, he doesn't regret it at all, since the experience he was able to have in these cities was for a lifetime. But he can't deny the fact that he is pretty excited to reach Odyne, the land of sorcery. A few days later, Aesir finally reached Odyne, and by that time, it was already nighttime, so he immediately checked into an inn. There, he is obviously excited to take his first step to becoming a magician. And if you wonder how, let's just say one needs to check their aptitude in a public office. The next morning, he immediately went on to visit one of Odyne's most known public offices. For those who don't know, sorcery is the process by which one's internal magic power, aka mana, is converted into energy using a specific technique, such as a spell, in order to produce a desired phenomenon. However, if one can't pass the aptitude test, then one can't study sorcery in Odyne at all. That is why Aesir is pretty nervous about this test, as it will initiate his first step into reaching his goal. Although it is already a little late to be saying this, he is confident in doing this because of his sheer optimistic aspiration. But deep inside, he is actually nervous to the core. When it is already his time to take the test, the nervousness in his eyes is so apparent. But Aesir has no choice but to do this, considering the fact that there are plenty of magical things to be found in this world. But the only thing he can learn is sorcery. As he sat down on the chair, the confusion in the examiner's eyes was so clear, causing Aesir to ask what was wrong with the look. Immediately, the examiner apologizes, explaining that he has never seen an elf taking the aptitude test before, though he has seen dwarves a number of times already. This statement caused Aesir to feel off a little, since it is known that dwarves have come to take the aptitude test dozens of times, with the aim of creating magic equipment. Although dwarves are supposed to be Aesir's enemy, as they are his ancestor's rival, Aesir can't help but hide the happiness in his eyes when he realizes that dwarves have gotten interested in learning magic so that they can enchant their smithing works. However, among all the hundreds that have tried to take the test, only 2 ever passed, and both are already long gone. So to start the test, the examiner shows Aesir all of the equipment they will use throughout the process. As he holds two of the rods close to one another, a magical beam of light then suddenly appears, indicating that he passed the aptitude test. With that said, since his intent is to learn sorcery, the examiner then went on to explain to him his various options. First is the Sorcery Military Academy. There he can learn sorcery and its applications for warfare. Unfortunately, one needs to have an Eastern United League citizenship to qualify to enroll in the said academy. The second is the Adventurers Academy. There, one can learn how to fight monsters and use sorcery for self-defense. However, if he were to enroll in the said academy, he would need to operate within the United League for 3 years straight. The third one is the Academy of Foundational Sorcery. As the name implies, it focuses primarily on basic foundational magic. And last but not least, one can learn under a magician, which is something perfect for Aesir's case. But the examiner did remind him that he might get in trouble as he learned sorcery. So if he happens to have faced one, the examiner asks him to contact them anytime. With that said, after a week, Aesir started approaching as many sorcerers as he could, hoping to be taken on as an apprentice. However, it seems like every single one of them regarded him with hostility and turned him down. With his motivation waning, he started pouring his energy into working for the Blacksmith Guild in the said city. In the said guild, it seems like Aesir has found himself an apprentice. Koshman Fiedel is a magician with an atelier who eagerly wants to forge himself a magic sword. And for him to be able to do just that thing, he needs to find the perfect teacher to teach him the good way of smithing. Aesir found out that Koshman was an apprentice himself until a few years ago. His master was the magician Rajdal, a dwarven magician who is known to be very rare in Odine. Rajdal has his own atelier in town where he crafts his tools. Seeing his master do great both in magic and in smithing, Koshman ended up getting interested in working on it as well. But then, a few years ago, Rajdal suddenly left the town to return to the Dwarven Kingdom, and Koshman was left to grow by himself. As of now, he can only use ready-made tools while researching magic equipment. But he doesn't know a thing about smithing, which is where Aesir enters the scene. After seeing Aesir do such a great job forging equipment, Koshman just immediately knew that Aesir was the perfect master he was looking for. Although he couldn't believe an elf like Aesir would be so good at this craft, he just knew that Aesir was definitely the one he wanted to teach him everything. So right now, Koshman is deeply begging for Aesir's approval to become his master. As Aesir reflects on his own request to be taken on as a pupil, he goes on to agree to teach Koshman about smithing, as long as Koshman teaches him sorcery in exchange, making this deal a win-win situation for both parties. At the back of Aesir's mind, meeting Koshman like this could only have been the work of fate. But if he is being honest, he's kind of annoyed it was Koshman and not him who brought it about. Anyway, right after their deal, they immediately went to Koshman's atelier. As soon as Aesir stepped in, he immediately felt this nostalgic feeling, as the place felt just like his master Rockmuncher's forging shop. For them to immediately start their lessons, Koshman went on to start the furnace right away. To start off, since they're going to make a magic sword eventually, Aesir decides to teach Koshman how to make a regular sword first. The clanging sounds somehow give Koshman the sense of comfort, as the aura of his then master somehow is coming back. Aesir is a blacksmith, and Koshman is a sorcerer. They are both birds that can't fly with their single wing, but by working together, they can fly towards their goal of crafting a magic sword. And by the time they no longer need each other for that purpose, Aesir will gladly be able to call Koshman a friend. The next morning, they then started their sorcery lessons. Koshman teaches Aesir how to control his inner mana first, and to Koshman's surprise, it seems like Aesir is quite the talented one for being able to learn it right away. With that said, they then moved on to learning the techniques. According to Koshman, everything that influences one's mana is a piece of the formula. A series of actions such as speech, intent, and patterns can greatly make sorcery possible. That is why, for Aesir to be good at using magic, he first needs to learn how these formulas affect mana. At first, Aesir started to feel guilty, considering he already knew how to talk with spirits, which many magicians can't. So for him, learning sorcery just feels like cheating. But then, Koshman made him realize that there's no such thing as cheating. If Aesir gave the will and the aptitude to learn sorcery, he would have as much right as anyone. And just like that, the two began alternating teaching and learning sorcery and smithing every day. As the day passed by, it seemed like the two started to get along so well, causing another great friendship to blossom. It has already been months since Aesir first got to Odine. One day, he happened to receive a letter from Irina, updating him about the happening in Ledrian at the moment. It seems like no formal apology was issued to the elves, which was something Aesir was already expecting. However, he doesn't worry at all, since in about 3 to 5 years, Ludria's forest will already be overflowing with monsters. On the other hand, it seems like Aesir still has other concerns to take care of. As it turns out, there is but one elf carrying a child of man. Since there is still no possible way of knowing if the child can commune with the spirits, Aesir is temporarily asked to take care of the child for now. Just thinking about it makes Aesir tired already. However, since he already promised to do so back then, he has no choice but to fulfill what he needs to do. Since he still doesn't know if it is a boy or a girl, Aesir already started thinking of activities he can do with the child when it arrives. He also promised to make sure to take care of the child the best way he can and become its guardian and closest companion. Fast forward, a year has already passed in Odine, and it seems like Aesir and Koshman are still training non-stop. Since they have already learned the basics of both sorcery and smithing from one another, the two are now starting to discuss more about magic tools. For their first official project, the two decided to make their own short metal wand. In year 3, there have already been a couple of developments with Aesir's sorcery skills. On the other hand, the Draudian army has been invading northern Zaire, so the kingdom has been requesting for backup from the Azed Alliance. Students from Odine's Sorcery Academy were sent, and one of those students brought one of Aesir and Koshman's wands to battle. Surprisingly, it ended up saving a lot of lives. As a result, the little barrier wand got a lot of attention all at once. Since the wand's work was constant, the army has now fully integrated it into their official weapons. Meanwhile, it seems like Koshman is also working on some research, and as long as he doesn't finish it just yet, they will not start working on their magic sword just yet. Aside from that, it turns out that 2 years from now, Aesir is left to take charge of the half-elf, but he is sure by that point, Koshman and he will already be done teaching each other their respective skills. Thus, in simple words, in 2 years, they both intend to leave this nest each with a co-created magic sword in hand. So for them to reach that point, it is going to take every bit of their collective ability. In year 4, after countless prototypes, they finally made their very own magic sword. Somehow seeing the sword get used makes Aesir quite emotional, as it is something he has been looking forward to for years. In year 5, Aesir will now begin taking his offensive arts exam. Although Aesir doesn't care about ranks or honors, he still wants to get his hands on that sorcerer certification. And as expected, Aesir did well once again. It has already been 5 years since he began learning magic, and Aesir's magic sword has now been finished. With that said, it is now about time for Koshman and him to start their separate journey on different roads. As Aesir reminisces about his time with Koshman, he starts to get emotional all of a sudden. Koshman is both his partner in crime and rival, almost. But the roads they were taking diverged at this point, just like how their magic swords couldn't be more different. With that said, Aesir is hoping to see Koshman once again in the future, with the intent to show him a brand new magic sword he crafted by them. When Aesir finally reached the capital of Zanes, he went on to stay in Swege Inn, where he and Irina planned on meeting. As soon as Irina got in, he went on to inform Aesir about everything that was happening at the Ludrian kingdom right now. Following the whole affair, many people in the eastern region have immigrated away, fearful of the calamity that might happen. As a result, the country's harvests have seen a depression as a result of the East's downturn in population. Aside from that, it seems like Aesir's plan has been going well since the royal family now has been taking action before it is too late for them to rebuild their empire back from the ground. Since Aesir knows for a fact that Irina would be able to take care of this matter herself, their discussion about the kingdom has aborted for a bit. Immediately, Aesir went on to ask Irina where the child he was supposed to take care of is. But since the child is still taking a midday nap, Aesir has no choice but to control his excitement for a bit. Seeing the looks in Aesir's eyes, Irina knows that he genuinely would want the best for the child, but Irina reminds him that taking this child in might only lead to heartache. This statement made Aesir wonder if Irina happens to be concerned for his sake, or if she is simply projecting her anxieties onto him. So he went on to assure her that he was doing this because he wanted to, and if she is worried about what might happen in the end, there's no need to fear at all, considering Aesir knows himself that he would not retreat to the ward because of fear. These kind words somehow struck Irina so much, and when the spirits went on to send the signal that the child had already woken up, Aesir immediately went on to visit it in its room. As soon as he opens the door, Aesir somehow can't manage to be dazzled by the child's cuteness. Upon checking, it seems like the child is actually a boy. As Aesir leans closer, it seems like the child himself is also dazzled by how shiny Aesir is. As the child pinches his cheeks, Aesir can't help but smile so widely. Although for many this probably looks incredibly bizarre, but he knows that he is enjoying every moment of it. After that brief cuteness overload moment, Aesir happens to remember that this child has not been named yet, so Aesir ends up naming him Wyn. Now that they have finally introduced themselves to each other, Aesir's heart is so happy, considering the fact that he will have the chance to take care of such a cute child like Wyn. However, after a couple of minutes, it seems like Aesir is clueless about what to do next. But along the way, it seems like Aesir was able to still manage to do it correctly. When he goes out to shop for some goods, he also brings Wyn with him. Even Nana herself is quite in love with Win's cuteness. But as it turns out, it seems like Aesir is actually planning on asking Nana to take care of Win while he works, as he finally decided to stay in town for 1 or 2 years. He did promise to pay Nana plenty for her job. Without hesitation, Nana went on to agree to Aesir's request. And just like that, it seems like Win has found himself a new friend to play with. On the other hand, it seems like Aesir did this so that Win would be able to adjust to new things and environments. With that taken care of, Aesir then tells the two that they were now about to eat macaroni gratin, one of Aesir's favorites. As they sat down around the dining table, Nana started to ask some questions if elves liked apples so much, since if they did, she planned on cooking more food with it so that the inn would have more elf customers. However, it seems like Nana asks the wrong elf, considering Aesir literally loves all kinds of food there is. While watching Win eat, Aesir starts to tell himself that once Win is a little bit older, he would like to take him on a food tour across the land. And Aesir hopes Win likes traveling half as much as he does, as he wants to see all kinds of places with this cute child. Compared to him, Aesir knows that Win doesn't have very much time to do that himself. While they peacefully eat their lunch, a man then says hi to Aesir. As soon as Aesir saw the man's face, he immediately recognized it as someone from the Blacksmith Guild. Since he only worked for them for a couple of weeks 6 years ago, Aesir didn't think that someone from the guild would be happy to see him at all. As he thinks of it, he then suddenly realizes that he should have asked the man if he has some work Aesir can take care of. Considering he already decided to keep Win company for a bit, Aesir plans to check with the guild eventually later on the day. After a month of taking it easy, Aesir finally has a couple of jobs to do already. Aside from that, it seems like Aesir has also become so popular among blacksmiths that many have already been lining up to ask him to take them as his apprentice. Knowing that Aesir is now a busy person, some of his workmates went on to assure these people not to bother Aesir directly as much as possible. But above all, it seems like Aesir has been asked to have an audience with the King of Trivia. Anyhow, it seems like everyone in the guild is honored to work with someone like Aesir, as this is something not all people can have. With that said at the back of Aesir's mind, time has indeed passed by so easily. But being back here again just feels like home for Aesir. On the other hand, while Aesir is busy working, Nana is making sure to take care of Win the best way she can. As much as possible, she keeps on encouraging Win to play with kids her own age, as it is an important part of growing up. However, it seems like Win is just out of the ordinary, making it hard for him to make friends. That is why, as much as possible, whenever Aesir has a day off, he always takes Win hiking and teaches him a thing or three. Since Win is a little too young to be taught how to fight or commune with spirits, Aesir just makes sure the little boy learns how to be strong inside. Upon observing, Aesir can tell that Win is the type of child who responds very well to being given things and is even prone to developing heavy attachments. But it seems like he is not good at asking for things of his own volition. That's exactly why Aesir wants Win to learn spirit communing properly, even at such a young age. But aside from that, Aesir has also been teaching Win how to think on his own. Although Win looks like a 4-year-old, he is actually already 7, so it is a must that he knows how to make decisions himself. Aside from that, with Nana and Aesir looking after him, Win is simply motivated to learn. 1 year later, it seems like Aesir is worried at the fact that the humans that are around Win's age will now soon outpace his growth, considering he is a half-elf. But that is something they will have to deal with sooner or later regardless. A year and a half later, a letter from Irina arrived, saying that Aesir and Win are good to enter Ludria now. Aesir does everything to persuade Win, but it seems like the child has built such an unbreakable attachment with Nana that he can't let her go anymore. So Aesir asks Win to make Nana a gift. Although Nana wanted to bid Win goodbye with a smile, after seeing the gift, she started crying her eyes out, causing Win to insist on staying. But since they can't do so, Aesir has no choice but to drag him out of the city, with Win still crying, as Ludria is now waiting for the return. After traveling for a few days, Win and Aesir finally reached the royal capital of Ludria, Orpheal. It seems like Aesir decided to avoid the eastern region of the country when he and Win traveled to the kingdom, considering that was the place where he caused an earthquake. But even here, he is still getting countless stares. As he passed down one store, a vendor then called his attention. It seems like the old man is shocked to see that Aesir is already back. As Aesir thinks more deeply about it, he finally remembers who this person is. After catching up for a bit, Win and Aesir finally decided to visit Yosogiryu Dungeon to see Keiha. When they got in, the new students of the dojo started telling them that they were not allowed to enter at all. However, when these pupils finally realized that Aesir is no outsider, as he is the prodigal disciple who repaired the dojo, these students immediately gave Aesir his due respect. Then suddenly, Keiha finally enters the scene, looking so strong and mature. it seems like Keha didn't expect Aesir to get back this soon. So Aesir went on to jokingly say that he thought it would be better to be a decade early than a decade late. After a while, Keha finally noticed Wyn, so Aesir went on to introduce the two to each other. Aesir informs his then swordmaster that Wyn is his adopted son, and whom he has been taking good care of these past few years. Knowing Aesir to be someone with a good heart, Keha immediately smiled at that fact. On the other hand, it seems like Keha has some kids to take care of herself. As a result, she went on to tell Mizuha and Shizuki to think of Wyn as a younger brother, and let's just say the three get along so well. Some weeks later, it seems like Aesir has been spending his time forging blades for Keha and playing with Wyn and the two kids non-stop. But it looks like his attempt at being considerate to the other disciples has backfired somewhat. Apparently, Keha's poor mood is starting to frighten the other disciples. That is why, to lift Keha's mood, Aesir finally shows off his swordsmanship form to everyone. But it seems like Keha wants Aesir not to use a wooden sword. Instead, he will need to use the sword he keeps at his side, the magic blade Aesir created with Koshman. In all honesty, Aesir hasn't mastered using it 100%. But since this is what Keha wants, Aesir went on to do as he was ordered to. Although his form has undeniably improved since the last time Keha saw it, Keha still didn't want to sugarcoat things, as she goes on to state that Aesir's form is not fit for combat at all. It is as though she is looking at her own blade from so long ago. Or perhaps it is as though Aesir's sword is not wielded with the intent to grow stronger at all. So Keha went on to emphasize that if he wants to improve, he needs to start having prospects of honing his blade any further. On top of that, ensure that her words are engraved in Aesir's mind. She went on to continue, stating that for her, Aesir still lacks the drive to engage in battle. In short, he still doesn't have a great fighting spirit. That is why he needs to practice more, to gain more. Some weeks later, at the northern part of the Ludria kingdom, near the border to the Feudal Empire, Aesir is seen guarding the border, as he promised to Irina that he will be protecting Ludria from any invasion by the Feudal Empire. Although Ludria has done a lot of dirty things to the elves, Aesir and the others can't possibly let the kingdom fall, considering all of the hard work they put into the Elven-Ludria negotiations will go to waste if another country takes over. To be perfectly blunt, it is far more convenient for elves as a whole to have humans who know not to mess with them as neighbors, as opposed to ones who see them as a strange novelty. And it is safe to say that Ludria would indeed owe the elves big after this. When Aesir reached the top of the mountain, he was shocked to see how wide the man-made path the kingdom had made. However, since it doesn't work so much for Aesir, he goes on to do a little work on it using his land-shaking powers. It seems like Aesir went on to lift some of the land so that the next generation could build a new road in the future. At the back of Aesir's mind, if he wasn't so critically deficient in fighting spirits, maybe he might have run in and taken the fight to the Empire himself. But as he thinks more about it, he just doesn't think he is cut out for that. Aesir then went on to contemplate that the beauty of Keha's blade enamors him, and he now wants to wield it as she does. Despite the fact that he is halfway to reaching that goal, he's still eager to become the student Keha would be proud of. However, Aesir is well aware that he doesn't have any motivation to become stronger at all. Although it might sound a bit arrogant, he knows to himself that he is already strong enough as is. So, as things are, he is fine with a wanting swordsman that just likes swords, but it is still possible that he will change his mind someday. However, it sounds like Keha wouldn't have the chance to see Aesir mature to become the best swordsman there is. 1 year later, Aesir is working on a sword to enter the fair this year, which is something they will present to the king. But it seems like Aesir can't concentrate with Keha's face flitting in and out of his mind. As a result, he suddenly decided to go on a trip to Viscourt with Wyn. But before they can leave, it seems like Shizuki also wants to come along. Despite Aesir's concerns, Shizuki somehow managed to get permission to leave. Wyn is very attached to both Shizuki and Mizuha, so traveling together won't be a problem at all. After walking for a couple of days, they have finally reached their destination. As the gates to Viscourt opened, Aesir started to reminisce about the time he first walked through those same gates with Irina, Martina, and Creius of the White Lake. In this same town, he was able to meet his first master, so being able to step on this land after 15 years is somewhat emotional for Aesir. As they walk around the city, Aesir is able to come across Rodner, the first guard he ever met. After catching up a little, Aesir and the two boys then went on to visit Creius and Martina's estate. After settling inside as Martina insisted, Creius returned shortly thereafter. His eyes passed over Wyn and Aesir, but when they settled on Shizuki, his demeanor became somewhat strained. So Aesir speculated that maybe Creius is Shizuki and Mizuha's father. However, that wouldn't add up, considering Creius was already married when he and Keha met, and Aesir is sure enough that Keha is never the type who would homewreck a family. Now that his curiosity has gotten deeper, Aesir just brushed it off for now, since it is not technically his problem to dwell on. He just tells himself that for sure, Keha loves both her kids with everything she has, just like how Aesir loves Win despite him not being his biological child. In the end, no matter what he does or does not know, he will be here for these kids no matter what. The next day, it seems like Shizuki went on to ask Creius for a duel. At this point, Aesir finally realizes that this might be Shizuki's goal in coming to this court this whole time. As the two fight in the backyard, Aesir notices that Creius' blade work has come to emphasize skill, more than sheer power. Meanwhile, Shizuki's skill is not that well developed just yet. Shizuki may not be consciously aware of it, but Aesir thinks that the child is trying to get closer to his probable father via swordplay. But stepping back, including Shizuki, Aesir doesn't feel that anyone has been acting with malice or bad faith. And in that case, Aesir finally tells himself that he is not inclined to worry too much, since he knows that if anyone needs him, all they have to do is ask. As Aesir keeps on getting a bit emotional with his thoughts, Shizuki and Creius continue their duel till the end of the day. About 1 month later, the moment they returned to the capital, Mizuha came down to Aesir like a ton of bricks. It seems like she got so emotional at the fact that Aesir only brought Shizuki with them, not even inviting her to come as well. But knowing that she will feel okay one day, Keha tells Aesir not to worry at all. With that being said, now that he is back in the capital, he then immediately starts finishing forging the sword he is about to submit to the show. After working non-stop for hours, Aesir finally went on to decide to have a short break with the kids. It seems like they are out and about once again. While they are out, Aesir realizes that as a child of the dojo master, both Mizuha and Shizuki are very disciplined and rarely self-indulgent. But at the back of Aesir's mind, even then, they are still both just children. Even with all the love and affection their mother and grandmother give them, Aesir can tell that there is still a desire for some kind of paternal figure. That is why Shizuki was so dogged in his challenge to Creius. Mizuha, meanwhile, simply has a somewhat spoiled side, which Aesir thinks is manifesting from a desire for acknowledgement, which to be honest, Aesir finds so cute. After walking for a good hour or two, they finally reach their destination, a huge magical tree. It is said that this tree is sacred and one can only perceive it while in the presence of those who can see the spirits. This is technically where Aesir wants to take the kids. After sightseeing this majestic tree, as the night bites, the three then sat down to eat dinner in the forest. There, Mizuha thanks Aesir for bringing her with him today. Then out of nowhere, Mizuha went on to ask if she would make a good adventurer. But knowing that Mizuha is still young to think of these things, Aesir just went on to reply to her in a joking way. But hypothetically, if Mizuha does end up adventuring, Aesir would be willing to set her up with weapons and armor, just like he did with Keha in the past. Fast forward, it has already been 8 years since Aesir returned to dojo. When the twins reach the age of 15, Aesir decides to gift them with a magic sword. Win, however, has visually grown less than half of how much they have grown, which is hard on his part, but is something that they need to accept eventually. On a side note, it seems like Keha's mom's death is already at hand, which is why the old lady went on to have a talk with Aesir alone. The old lady revealed everything she knew about Keha and the children. Despite the fact that Aesir has been such a blessing and joy to their family, the old lady can't deny the fact that he was somewhat also a curse to Keha. After he left, Keha started seeking ways to make him proud when he came back. She didn't intend to have children, but since she promised to pass down her skills to her children, Keha ended up convincing Creius and his wife to allow her to conceive Creius' children. Although it indeed confused the hell out of Aesir at some point, in the end he was able to realize that both parties had reasons why they ended up with such decisions. In the end, Keha still becomes the best mother for the twins, and there's no denying that. Aside from that, the old lady also wants Aesir to realize that her daughter's love for him will never fade, no matter what. 5 days later, Keha's mother finally took her leave from this world. In spite of the loss of a loved one, there was little change in their day-to-day lives. Soon enough, that loss had simply become part of the past. 2 years later, Master Rock Muncher sent Aesir a letter, asking if Aesir is willing to take the offer of becoming his assistant as he needs one right now. Immediately, Aesir accepted the offer. After all, this is something he was hoping to do for the last few years. However, it seems like Win wouldn't allow him to go without him, so Aesir has no choice but to take his kid to the Dwarven Kingdom. The two prepared for 3 months, and when it was finally time to leave, Aesir and Keha had yet another emotional farewell. However, this time around, Aesir wants Keha to promise to spend her final days by Aesir's side when he comes back. Seeing the look on her face makes Aesir quite happy, although she is much older than when they first met. But for Aesir, she is still as beautiful as ever. After a few days, they finally reach the northern part of the Ludria Kingdom, near the Dwarven country. Now together with a Dwarven guide, Aesir does his best to ensure that he and Win get to the Dwarf Kingdom no matter what. That is why, despite the cold, he keeps on moving forward. until one day all they need to cross is one more mountain and they will finally reach their destination. It is known that neither elves or humans should be allowed to enter the dwarven country, but exceptions could be made if one has received an invitation from a dwarf with enough influence. The dwarven country is in a great big cavern. According to the guide, tens of thousands of dwarves live here, so it is safe to say it is such a big country. When they finally reached the gates, lots of dwarves started shouting at Aesir, considering elves had not been allowed to enter the area since the beginning of time. As a result, Aesir shouted back, stating that he was summoned by his master, so if anyone had a problem with that, then they might have to make him leave by force. As the dwarf starts to prepare his fists, Aesir does as well, and surprisingly, it seems like Aesir has managed to take him down in one go. However, it seems like Aesir hasn't realized he is literally in the dwarven country, where everyone is known to be the strongest when it comes to fistfights like this. As a result, in the end, he ended up getting more bruises than expected. Thankfully, his master got to pick him up himself. As soon as they got to the master's residence, Aesir was immediately flooded with scolding, but in the end, the two ended up laughing at each other. On the other hand, it seems like Wyn is having a discussion with the other dwarves himself. The others thought he was a girl, considering he didn't have a single hair on his face, and just like Aesir, it seems like little Wyn has also been inviting trouble himself. Aesir somehow finds it cute seeing Wyn getting into his very first fistfight, and it seems like his master Asvold raised his kids without giving them any biases against elves as well. Now that the fun is finally over, Aesir and his master then went to get down to brass tacks. So to summarize what they have discussed, it seems like Aesir's master is competing with a great number of skilled craftsmen, but one dwarf now stands ahead of the pack, namely one Rajudol, the very same man who acted as the sorcery master for Koshman. He is Aesir's own sorcery master / smithing pupil. However, for Asvold, Rajudol is technically not a master smith at all, as he has been able to process mithril himself. Mithril is the single most prized precious metal among dwarves and the symbol of their king. Processing one requires an insane amount of heat, which is why the country has a specialized forge for that exact purpose. And that forge is said to be a hidden treasure reserved exclusively for the king himself. However, it seems like Aesir knows exactly how Rajudol is doing all this, considering Rajudol is a dwarf who specializes in sorcery on the side. With this information, Asvold finally realizes what is going on. However, he made it a goal to ensure that Rajudol doesn't become the next king, considering a lot of dwarves who can't use sorcery might fall down if the kingdom started forging nothing but magical tools. Aside from that, Asvold also wants to fulfill his promise to Aesir, that once he becomes king, he will make sure to allow elves to enter the kingdom anytime they want. Meanwhile, at the back of Aesir's mind, if Koshman is here, he will surely be eager to watch his master getting into a showdown with Aesir's master, with Koshman surely saying that his master will win for sure. But on a serious note, Aesir is sure of the fact that Rajudol might have been working towards taking the throne for decades already. After all, he has been studying magic tools with Koshman for that purpose, and left his gifted apprentice to his own devices to finally put their research to use. So Aesir informs his master that Rajudol is indeed someone who is not easy to beat at all, which Asvold is quite aware of, hence why he called Aesir for help in the first place. As of now, Asvold sees they have two things to work on. One is to build a fire hot, and the second is a furnace that they can handle. But since they need to wait for the materials to gather and the construction to finish up, Aesir plans to work on carving out a comfortable niche for him and Wyn in the dwarven country. After doing all the normal things in the kingdom, one day, one of the elves who turned out to be one whom Aesir got into a fight with when he first arrived, went on to take him to a place where the apprentice is trained. As soon as Aesir entered the room, everyone became silent, with a judging look painted on their face. But as time passed by, it seemed like all of them just got along pretty well. This time around, it seems like Aesir is planning to forge something for Wyn, whom he has already trained back in Keha's dojo. As he works on it, every dwarf's gaze is locked on him. However, instead of getting intimidated, Aesir becomes motivated instead, considering this a way he can show everyone what his master has taught him over the years. About a year later, the two have already settled into the dwarven country pretty well, although Aesir was kicked out of the apprentice training area, considering his skills are not for an apprentice level anymore. But the dwarves that he met there ultimately recognized his ability as a blacksmith. On the other hand, it seems like Wyn is also doing good himself as he started attending school. Although there are some dwarves who don't want to be friends with him, Wyn still manages to build connections with many of his classmates in school. By the looks of it, it seems like Wyn is tackling these challenges head-on like a grown-up little man. Meanwhile, it seems like the furnace Asvold and Aesir are waiting for is already ready as well, which means they are now set for the main event. A few days later, after spending some quality time with Wyn, Asvold and Aesir started spending their days coaxing a spirit to move into their new furnace. It wasn't really a problem, since the spirit from Asvold's old forge seemed to still be very fond of him. so getting it to change residence wasn't too hard. Aside from that, it seems like Asvold also wants them to start using Mithril themselves. However, since Asvold is still not king, he is forbidden to teach Aesir how it works, so they are just going to refine it for now. And just like that, they started working once again. Things have progressed from there pretty much how they would expect it to be. 5 years later, Asvold and Aesir started working through a number of ideas they had in mind. Aside from that, it seems like Wynn has also grown drastically himself. The once little kid has now grown interested in smithing himself and is now officially Asvold's apprentice. Then suddenly, they got disturbing news. It seems like the Empire of Fodal is readying an invasion of Ludria, shocking Aesir considering he already blocked the road between the two when he lifted that mountain a few years back. However, since the news was indeed confirmed by the Dwarven caravan, Aesir has no choice but to leave Wynn for a year in the Dwarven kingdom while he checks up on others back in Ludria. Before heading to Fodal, Aesir together with a couple of dwarves was able to cross the infamous Draco's Peak, which according to legend has a dragon nest inside it. As Aesir tries to remember it, dragon's existence was actually mentioned in elf stories as well. According to some poems he has heard before, dragons are actually among the 5 immortal beings to have lived in this world. It is said that these creatures would not be awakened from their sleep until the end of the world is already near. So when Aesir was asked if he believes in such creatures, he went on to jokingly state that he has no plans on seeing one now, since that would be quite a problem. The dwarves then laughed a little at Aesir's sudden unpredicted answer, and they went on to continue with their journey to Fodal. During the whole course of this mission, Aesir plans to investigate the Fodal Kingdom's alleged plans to save Ludria. Since Aesir is not sure if the dwarves who reported to him were stating reliable information, he has no choice but to check it for himself. And if the information he received is actually true, he also plans to figure out how Fodal plans to invade the country. Aside from that, he is also curious to know if Fodal happened to have a discussion seeking help from a high elf in moving the debris he has put in the middle of the path across the mountains, considering there is no way a normal elf would be able to commune with the spirits of that level. With that being said, 3 weeks later, Aesir and the others have finally arrived at Koltoria, a buzzing town in the Fodal Empire. But instead of coming in all at once, the dwarves decided to enter the city first so that they could find a safe place where Aesir could stay for the rest of the trip. Since dwarves are kind of neutral among empires, it is safe to say that they are the best comrades one can have in such a dreadful investigation mission. After receiving the signal, Aesir immediately went on to fetch the note that the dwarves left for him, since there was no way possible he could stay in the inn where the others were staying. As much as possible, Aesir tries his best to keep a low profile to avoid causing trouble to the dwarves who have already done more than enough for him. But as soon as he got to the place the dwarves had prepared for him, he started getting emotional at how well prepared everything for him was. As a result, he now has no choice but to do his best to ensure that the dwarves' sacrifices for him would not go to waste. That is why, as soon as he woke up the next day, he immediately went on to start investigating. His continued eavesdropping and non-stop talking lasted for about 3 weeks. After conferring with the dwarves, Aesir can now confirm that the Empire was indeed definitely preparing for war. With all the war supplies they ordered, it would be bizarre if they weren't going to invade Ludria. But the question now is, how will the Empire's army cross the mountains? Well, based on what Aesir knows, a man whose name is Lei Hong happens to have an idea of how. So immediately, Aesir went on to look into this Lei Hong guy. It seems like Lei Hong has got the Emperor's liking, so even if the others would want to oppose his suggestion on invading Ludria, they have no choice but to agree to it, since the Emperor would agree with Lei Hong nonetheless. Even the Emperor's then most trusted right-hand man was branded as a traitor for questioning Lei Hong's full authority for the invasion. But what's weird is the fact that there have been rumors stating that Lei Hong devours the slaves he buys. Since the time for their meeting had finally ended, Aesir went on to contemplate whether Lei Hong happened to practice cannibalism. But since he has no proof to prove this feeling, he just went on to continue with his investigation to gather more information. After a few days, the dwarves then went on to inform him that the other dwarves who were supposed to meet them in town had gone missing after having a surprise audience with the Emperor. What's weird is the fact that no one has seen the group of 9 dwarves leave the Emperor's room at all. As a result, Aesir went on to continue with his investigation even more, and he was surprised with what he found out. It seems like his hunch regarding Lei Hong was horribly correct. Based on his investigation, Lei Hong came to the Emperor and offered to restore the leader's youth. That is why he has been killing slaves and non-humans in ritualistic sacrifices. So, as Aesir takes a closer look at it, he finally ends up realizing that Lei Hong is actually a hermit who draws the power of nature into themselves and commands it in a sort of hermetic wizardry. Hermits happen to have 3 kinds. The ones who practice the heretical arts are called shamans, while those who gather life force through pleasures are known as incubi or succubi. Last but not least, the vampires, or beings that gather energy by consuming flesh and blood. These creatures are known as strong beings, so moving the block in the path through the mountains wouldn't be a problem for them at all. That is why Aesir will not anymore hesitate to get rid of Lei Hong, since the lives of his loved ones in Ludria are now in line if he doesn't do anything as soon as possible. So to start off with this plan, Aesir decided to visit the imperial capital, since Lei Hong is said to have been stuck there due to the snow, and it seems like the dwarves have insisted on coming with him as well. 2 weeks later, at Dagria in the capital, with a map that the dwarves have handed him as well as the census, Aesir easily found Lei Hong's mansion, and to his surprise, it is as massive as a royal castle. However, what's weird is Aesir doesn't sense a single servant inside. As soon as he arrived, he immediately went on to the exact place where Lei Hong's dark presence was prominent. Just as he opened the window, he immediately started attacking him with his arrows. However, to his surprise, none of his shots even landed a hit on the guy. At this point, he finally realizes that Lei Hong is indeed a monster inside. So with much effort, he tries his best to blast the guy with compressed air, but even that doesn't land a scratch at Lei Hong at all. As their fight intensifies, Aesir starts to look at himself as pathetic for not thinking that Lei Hong is a vampire. So this guy can basically command nature itself with his hermetic arts. That is why Lei Hong can nullify whatever power communing with the spirits that is lending Aesir. That is why Aesir can't help but regard himself as weak, considering Lei Hong's strengths are indeed on the next level compared to him. Knowing the fact that the power the spirits had lent him is fearsome, but the fact that Lei Hong can sweetly revert them is just phenomenal. So Aesir started thinking if he just tried to leverage brute force, then he would surely have a chance. But at this point, there is a big chance that he will never be able to beat Lei Hong at all. However, as he remembered the fact that he was doing all of this for his loved ones, Aesir had no choice but to have courage and continue to fight. Using the magic he learned from Koshman, the will and technique he got from Keha, and the magic sword he wielded with his own hands, Aesir ended up completely defeating the monster in the end. As soon as he was already sure that Lei Hong was finally dead, he immediately headed back to where the dwarves were staying to avoid getting suspected by the guards. It took him around 10 days to recover, and during that time, the investigation into Lei Hong's death had already been ongoing. Since none of the nobles even cared about Lei Hong's death, it was not long before the emperor started crumbling to pieces. Now that Lei Hong is already gone, he doesn't have a source of energy anymore, causing his illness to get even more severe than before. The prince has also stepped in to handle the empire. As soon as he was crowned as the new emperor, he went on to apologize to the dwarves for what happened to their 9 comrades. Aside from that, the transformation of the king into a ghoul was also kept a secret from the public, since it would definitely cause so much panic among the people. But above all, the most important thing now is that the war has been averted. As a result, Aesir now plans to head back to the dwarves' kingdom, but he is still looking forward to coming back to Fodal. But the next time he comes to visit, he wants to walk through the gates in broad daylight and not skulk around in the dark. According to Genesis, the creator has made 4 beings that would make the world. First is the High Elves, which can talk to the high spirits. Then there's the True Titan, high above the clouds. Then, to link the two, the True Phoenix soaring between heaven and earth. Lastly, to act as the world's protector, the True Dragon, sleeping within a mountain. After that, the other beings like dwarves, elves, humans, and beastkin. However, as the world flourished, the gods began to quarrel. It seems like they have favored and prioritized different races. The conflict brought into being mana, and mana's introduction to the world brought about monsters. However, if this conflict continues, the world's protector, which is said to be the True Dragon, would be awakened. So the gods have no choice but to join hands instead. So the gods created a world where they can live on their own, and they made a pact and left this world to its own devices. But all of these were just according to the myth, based on what Aesir has remembered. It seems like Aesir is back in the Dwarven Kingdom and is now spending time with Wynn playing chess. With the Fodal Empire's problem settled, he and Wynn were granted citizenship by the presiding king. Since this is the first time an elf has been granted such a thing, Aesir can't help but brag about it. Aside from that, it seems like for Aesir this was such a good thing, since if Asvald was the one who granted it to them when he became king, there's a big chance that the citizens would be angry about it, as they would see Asvald as having favorites. On top of that, it seems like Aesir also plans on having a meeting with Irina, since they have some matters to take care of. With Wynn finding out about this, he can't help but ask Aesir to let him join, since he also badly wants to see Irina as well. After they played some chess, Wynn then asked Aesir to teach him some of his new sword techniques. Ever since Aesir came back from Fodal, Wynn can't defeat him anymore. But Wynn made it clear that Aesir shouldn't take it easy on him, since he wants to win on his own merit. Now that Wynn is already 24 years old, or around 12 years human age, he has been really keen on learning more about forging and swordsmanship, which makes Aesir quite proud. With this much dedication, Wynn is definitely becoming an adult himself. To think that Wynn, all grown up, somehow makes Aesir quite emotional. At the back of his mind, He wishes to take care of Win just a bit longer, but as much as possible, he tries to tell himself not to worry about this kind of thing at all. 1 year later, it seems like Irina finally has some updates. According to her, the elves who had previously worked as adventurers were mostly the ones who agreed on their proposition for elves to trade armor and weapons. Although this is not what they were expecting, it is still a relief that there are still some who are willing to hear out their proposal. But for now, while waiting for Irina's next reply, Aesir wants to take a bath. Not in a sauna, but a hot tub. So we went on to ask Asvald if there was a hot spring across the area. When he heard there was, he immediately decided to visit the site, taking Win with him. But to his surprise, it seems like Asvald, together with around 50 other people, started coming with him. Weeks later, since they arrived at the site, the dwarves have finally built the dream hot spring Aesir wants to have. But to his surprise, what the dwarves made was less a bathhouse and more a fortress instead. As time passed by, it seemed like the bathhouse had become quite popular among the dwarves. So Aesir made it an aim to let the elves appreciate hot springs the way dwarves have. So for that matter, he should finally wrap up the welcome preparations while he still has the time. 2 months later, the group of elves arrived, entering the dwarven country. Some of the elves can't deny the fact that they were quite surprised at the fact that dwarves and elves see each other now in a different way, considering how the two races saw each other before. But it seems like not a single dwarf gives them a second thought. To Asvald's explanation, Aesir's presence in the kingdom has definitely altered how the dwarves see elves now. So the guests shouldn't worry about any of that, as long as they behave according to the rules of the kingdom. With that being said, the introduction has finally started. 3 were adventurers named Jellica, Tormus, and Kyo. The last one is Horacio, an elf who has been wandering minstrels traveling the lands. Lastly is Levis, who is an artist who has worked for nobles, painting palaces and portraits, but seems to love landscapes so much more. Hearing this made Asvald realize that these elves might have a hard time adjusting, since it will surely take a while before they all can get used to living amongst the dwarves. So he tells them not to push themselves and try to relax as much as possible. But to their surprise, it seems like the elves that came to the dwarven country fit in pretty smoothly. However, it seems like they get along so well that Aesir can't help but feel ever so slightly irritated. On a side note, it seems like Elvis has been doing pretty well winning over everyone, considering her portraits of the children and their grandparents are quite popular. The adventurer elves fit in too, since they have been doing odd jobs like going on a hunt, so they pretty much connect with the dwarves in the ways they were used to. Aside from that, it seems like the elves race is now in debt to Aesir for being able to bring all of the kinds together. So as a payback, they would like to give Aesir everything they have to offer. That is why Aesir now aims to make sure that the elves don't regret meeting them halfway on this. With that said, there is a lot of work to be done for that to happen. Elves could, for instance, export things like fruit liqueurs. Now the problem lies in what arms they'd import, considering elves can't stand metalwork. That is why the two decided to talk to the dwarves to see if they were willing to take turns in crafting for the elves. This suggestion was quite something to Irina, since setting goals one step at a time is such a great thing. If both dwarves and elves have kindred spirits working towards the same goal, the gap between the two races will definitely end in no time. Now that everyone is already gone, all of them are having a great time drinking together in the pub, living their best life. But it seems like among all, Elvis is having the best time ever, considering she can now get a traveling caravan and see the world. Hearing this made Aesir wonder what he did with his life, since he had plans on what to do with his time for a good while now. What will he do once that's all done? Knowing that he has no small amount of self-indulgence, he starts to wonder if he will spend more of his time with the elves. But since he is not so sure about that now, he decided to just think about it some other time. Fast forward, it has been 3 years since the elves arrived here. Dwarven elven commerce is gradually filling out and becoming more of a reality. Aesir has also found some talented smiths who would help him craft equipment to export to the elves, Garav and Rajadol. Aside from that, the traders who have been in charge of going to Fodal came to Aesir as well, stating that they think the trade between dwarves and elves are shaping up to work out pretty well. On the other hand, Asvald is now next in line for the throne, and elven-dwarven commerce is actively in progress. Aside from that, Win has also been improving in his smithing, to the point that he started doing jobs for customers. As everything is going well, Aesir now aims to fulfill one of his promises, which is to go back to Ludria after 10 or 20 years, which now happens to be the perfect timing. And it seems like Win also plans to come along with him as well. As they say goodbye, Win can't help but get a little emotional when he is saying his goodbyes to Asvald. By the time they parted ways, Win's tears had finally dried out, and unlike when they first arrived, he set off, walking forward on his own 2 feet. As soon as they arrived at Ludria, a lot of things had already changed. 2 of Keha's children now have their own family. Aside from that, it seems like the whole dojo has transformed completely. As they started to talk about what had happened with them these past few years, Keha happened to have asked Aesir if he was okay with the fact that Win was getting stronger than him. However, the thought that his son is improving makes him happy. However, knowing that Win is growing into a man who will decide on his own, Aesir can't help but feel a bit sad. That is why Keha insisted on training Aesir once again, so that they will have a bout in 3 years. 2 years later, as Keha and Aesir finally come back from their training, Aesir immediately went to the Viscount in order to pay a visit to the grave of the White Lakes members. 2 months ago, Creius died, then Meretna followed after him, which is expected considering both are pure humans. So with much respect, Aesir went on to pray to their grave. But aside from him, Irina is present as well. Knowing that Irina and the two somehow had quite a relationship before, Aesir knows that their deaths must have been painful for her. That is why he tries to comfort her when she needs it the most. At the back of Aesir's mind, the anguish Irina is feeling at this very moment is something he is sure he will go through in the not too distant future. So as much as possible, he tries to prepare himself as early as now. Aside from the members of the White Lakes team, Rodner, the first city guard that Aesir got close to, has also passed away. As he says his goodbyes to these wonderful people who have become a big part of his life, he and Keha then go back to the dojo. As 3 years have passed, the bout between the father and son has finally begun. The non-stop training they were able to receive definitely caused them to improve drastically, and their fighting techniques now are beyond comparable. However, as much as possible, Aesir tries his best not to get defeated as soon as he remembers Keha's statement, telling him not to be easy on Win since there's a big chance that this fight will become Win's lifetime inspiration to work hard and reach his goals no matter what. And just like that, it seems like Keha was right. Immediately right after their fight, Keha went on to inform Aesir that he would be going to the west, the land of the Beastkin and other dangerous creatures to hone his skills. At first, it seems like Aesir is against this decision, but in the end when he realizes that this is for Win's good, he just goes on to cry his eyes out at the fact that his once little immature son has now finally grown to be a fine young man. Although for sure, Win will encounter countless struggles from this point on, Aesir knows that the young man will be able to overcome them in ways he himself has never thought of. That is why he will support Win in his endeavors from now on. A year later after Win left, it had already been 6 years since Aesir returned to the dojo. As of today, a number of smithing apprentices are also flooding in. But there is one little catch. It seems like Keha's granddaughter Soha has decided that she wants to become a blacksmith, and it seems like the family is really not against it. As it turns out, Soha is doing all of this so that she can support her brother and family in the future. As a result, Aesir does the very best he can to make sure Soha is supplemented with the knowledge that she needs to grow as both a swordsman and a blacksmith. A few years later, when everything was going great, it seemed like Keha's health had been declining dramatically. Considering she can feel that her time is already near, she tries to bid her last farewell to Aesir. For the last time, she asks Aesir to get her sword for her, and as she sways the blade into the wind, Aesir can't help but get mesmerized by it. Seeing her do this made Aesir realize that this would definitely be the summation of Keha Yosugi. And it was not that long before Keha fell to the ground. Before she closes her eyes for good, she first expresses how much she loved Aesir from the beginning till now, causing Aesir to cry a bucket. Soon after, the burial was complete, and once Aesir saw that through, he decided to set out on his own. Although everyone in the dojo tried to stop him, deep inside, he just wasn't in the mood to stay in one place any longer. As he starts his travels, he also starts to read the last letter Keha has written for him. In the said letter, Keha promises that she will always be on Aesir's side, even if the memories they had start fading. So long as Aesir can hold a sword, she promises to be there to protect him no matter what. Aside from that, Keha also stated that she should go without saying. She will be happy if Aesir remembers her for a long time. Reading this emotional letter has caused Aesir to come up with the decision to head east to where Yosugiryu was born. With the best power that he can, he will make sure to pick up as many stories of her as he can so that he can return to her grave one day and share them with her. For him to be able to do just that thing, he decided to come along with the elf caravan, which Elvis has mentioned to him before. Although Aesir has the choice to just walk to his next destination, he ends up deciding with this option considering the caravan receives the letters Win sends from the west, and Aesir also doesn't want to be alone for now. Despite his not wanting to talk that much, he still wants to hear others talking. That is why he thinks this is the best place for him to be present. As time passed by, Aesir then was informed that Palogia, the place he once passed through when he was traveling to Velestrica, has now fallen to ruin, and is now known as Kiatica. It seems like their issues with the neighboring country have ultimately ended with their own destruction. As a result, they are now known as the vassal state of Velestrica. On a positive note, it seems like the city has been getting better. People have grown so close to the spirits that they now have access to clean drinking water, which, as Aesir remembers the town, didn't have before. After traveling for a while, the whole team just decided to rest up for a bit, so they went on to arrange their sleeping area. Before Aesir leaves them for good, the team asks how the High Elf plans to head to the east. It seems like Aesir will charter a boat in the United League, and then stop in Bardis and Oritanen to gather information on the wetlands, which is a place that is known as the Lizard Man's territory. Since Aesir doesn't have that much time in the world anymore, some of the members then helped him with his map, and they eventually headed to the nearest town to start off with their day. With everyone playing some sort of instrument, Aesir started telling the kids a story that was inspired by what happened to Palogia today. The story communicates very effectively that elves can teach one if they are nice, and their wrath is terrible and frightening. So if the knowledge of elves and the spirits becomes more commonplace, Aesir hopes that he can lead people to be good neighbors to one another. That same day, when the night finally bit, Aesir went on to assure the other elves that there was no need for them to get pressured into becoming so great, since everyone definitely has their own pace. So right now, the only advice he can give is that for them to just learn whatever they can as much as possible. First, they need to know if something piques their interest, since if there is, then they can start off with that. After all, once one has something to orient oneself towards, gaining experience would be a lot easier. As days pass by, it seems like it is already time for Aesir to leave to head to his destination. During his last night on the caravan, Irina invited him to have a drink. It seems like Irina is worried about the fact that Aesir will be off on his own from now on, considering it's a bit lonely to be alone. But Aesir assures her that it would not be the case at all. However, just to be sure, Aesir went on to ask if she wanted to come, and surprisingly, she declined, stating that she also had a few works that needed to be done. Hearing this gave so much relief to Aesir, knowing that Irina could now stand on her own, strong and independent. However, it seems like Irina has some personal request, and that is for Aesir to tell something important to those people if he happened to have come across the Wild Lake, aka the Titan above the clouds. And just like that, Aesir finally starts with his travels, and he finally ends up in Bardis. As soon as he stepped in, he could immediately tell that this town had a similar feel to Vistcourt, a place where adventurers gather. As he roams around, he goes on to decide to find a place that he would feel safe staying in, even if it is a bit more expensive than others. As soon as he got inside, he then started to tell himself that this was finally the right time to prepare for his travels to the wetlands. But for now, he first needs to learn about the monsters he will possibly run into, and see which are edible to eat, considering crossing the wetlands will take some time. Since he wants to enjoy the next leg of his journey, he needs to know how to properly prepare the food and get rid of the muddy stench as much as possible. Upon starting off with his journey, he was able to come across a number of monsters along the way, and it seems like he was also able to rest quite pretty well at night, which is a great thing considering he is investigating day and night. But it seems like the challenges don't stop from coming at Aesir one after another. Almost got eaten alive by a croc. Aesir tries his best to ensure that he kills this creature off, so it can be added to his food collection. Although he didn't learn as much as he would have liked from Bardis, but he knows deep inside that once he gets the hang of it, living smack dab in the danger zone isn't so bad anymore. Aside from that, with the help of the spirits, fighting off this creature wouldn't be that much of a struggle anymore. 1 month later, wandering through the wetlands, Aesir suddenly felt a presence watching him from behind. As he takes a closer look at it, he is sure that it is definitely something humanoid. As a result, he ended up with the conclusion that this might be the infamous long-thought extinct Lizard Man. Since he didn't want to approach and give the wrong idea, he just smiled and waved at it. As he continues with his journey, Aesir starts to get excited at the fact that there is a halfling in the Great Plains where he is headed now. For quite some time now, he has been pretty much excited about meeting them one way or another. A month later, after his long travels in the wetlands, he has finally reached the Great Plains everyone is talking about. Upon entering the field, a herd of wild and monster horses welcomes him. Seeing these horses somehow brings back memories for Aesir. As he is deep into his thoughts, an impactful smack of wind then brings him back to reality. To his surprise, it is actually the wind spirit that wants him to follow it to a certain location. This made Aesir wonder, since the spirits can't actually conceptualize how to wield their powers outside of simply operating in nature. They have the freedom to pursue whatever catches their attention. So it is odd that a wind spirit would be so attached to someone or something, considering they are freely flowing in air, unlike fire and water spirits who make strong attachments to one place. But since this is the wind spirit's doing, Aesir has no choice but to do as it says. As they finally reach their destination, Aesir was shocked to see that a number of armed men started attacking a relatively small village. As a result, Aesir ended up scaring the bad guys away, causing the people of the village to thank him endlessly. As he was invited into the meeting, based on Aesir's observation, these people are actually nomads, considering they live in a nomadic hut. The villagers' head then went on to thank Aesir for rescuing the village from Dahlia's army. A little girl named Selung then introduced herself as the wind-reading oracle for the tribe of Balm. Aside from that, she is also known as the Wind Child. Seeing this girl made Aesir wonder if she could indeed see the spirits. But the question is, why does the Wind Spirit care so much about Selang, considering Wind Spirit should be free and unrestrained, whereas Selang seems to be much the opposite? However, as Aesir takes a deeper look into it, he finally realizes that this tribe is putting all of the responsibility on a kid's shoulder, which is something he can't tolerate. That is why instead of rescuing the tribe and moving on, he knows that it would really not fix this dilemma at all. The tribe of Balm and the tribe of Dahlia are nomadic tribes that reverse the winds that blew across the plains. Their quarrel originates with the Wind Child, Selang, and the Flame Child, a young boy who is unnamed. The Flame Child arrived as though he materialized from the ether. The tribe of Dahlia leveraged his power to plunder the nations to the south. This created problems for Balm, who relied on trade with those nations. Very quickly, a backlash against nomadic tribes emerged from the people of the south, and without them, Balm became impoverished. Although the two tribes held countless talks, they all just ended up with more quarrels. Selang's father and most of Balm's able-bodied men were slain in the process. As a result, all that is left of Balm are the women, children, elderly, and young inexperienced fighters. Lately, the Dahlia tribe has been kidnapping mostly children, so the higher-ups have no choice but to ask for Aesir's help. As he eats the food the tribe has prepared for him, Aesir thinks that he has some grasp of things. It seems like the Spirit Wind did ask a favor of Aesir, and in order to actually manage that favor, he needs to do two things. First, make sure the Flame Child is a non-issue, and second, Balm needs some form of self-defense in their weakened state. So Aesir can pretty much teach Selang how to better commune with the spirits. However, Aesir is not sure if Selang is up to this, considering Balm has been trying to abuse her powers for quite some time now. So Aesir thought that the quickest way to do all of this was to eliminate the tribe of Dahlia to the last man. However, it seems like Aesir would do nothing like that, considering that is not how he takes care of things. But when he told the tribe panel that he didn't plan on killing the Flame Child, everyone started acting a bit off, angry and frustrated at the suggestion. As a result, the meeting ended quite abruptly. As Aesir steps out of the tent, Selang's little brother Shuro then approaches him, begging the High Elf to protect his sister no matter what. Reminding him of Wind, Aesir now has one more reason to fight beyond obliging the Wind Spirit's request. Some days later, the army of Dahlia is back again, but this time around, Aesir is already waiting for them at the front gates. While thinking of ways to defeat these large numbers, Aesir finally remembered the adventurers' party, White Lake, which was fully formed in their prime. Trying to find the Flame Child among them, Aesir uses the divine art of pyrokinesis, and before things get out of control, he finally gets his eyes locked onto his target. Knowing that there is no escape with Aesir, the Flame Child eventually stops resisting, marking Aesir's victory. Although some of the villagers were quite angry at the fact that Aesir didn't even bother to kill the Flame Child, Selang still went on to give her deepest gratitude to the High Elf. Seeing Selang take control of the situation made Aesir realize that she is indeed somewhat capable, as any adult would be in her position. But then, Aesir is still left to wonder, what kind of person hides behind that mask exactly? The next day, it seems like Shuro and the others want to learn how to commune with the spirits for battle. However, Selang already tells them that this will not be a simple play at all. But as Aesir thinks about it, it seems like teaching Shuro would be of great help in the long run. As soon as the sun was up, Shuro together with Selang then went on to the field to start their lessons. It seems like Aesir ended up deciding to teach Selang how to commune better with the spirits, while also teaching Shuro how to wield a sword. Aside from that, Aesir is also planning to teach Juyol, the Flame Child, how to fight without relying on his special abilities. This made Juyol quite shocked since he sees Aesir as a foe, so there is no way the High Elf would teach him anything. Hearing this made Aesir smile, so he went on to assure Juyol that it really isn't the case, since he didn't even see him as an enemy. Juyol's special ability is his pyrokinesis. However, that is his only card, and without it, he is pretty much defenseless. But more than that, Juyol is still just a kid, and Aesir doesn't want his life to boil down to being a living weapon. Aesir aims to give Juyol a life he deserves to live. Since the three have only ever been asked to make use of their inherent talents, Aesir wants them to learn new things, like unfamiliar things. Like his masters before him, Aesir can give the three the strength to find a better future. As a result, he stayed with the Balm tribe for a time, and when winter gradually visited the plains, the tribe moved further south. From there, they took an excursion into the southern country of Vivinal. There, Aesir tries to help the tribe by bringing up the trading business they had before. Although the southern citizens are still wary of them, it seems like Aesir's plans are slowly coming to pieces. However, comments regarding Dahlia's tribe somehow affect Juyol so much. That is why Aesir aims to make him feel seen and loved, as he doesn't want the young man to wind up trapped in self-pity forever. 1 year later, bit by bit, Juyol's position has been changing. He has now done a lot to help Balm, and it seems like people of the tribe find it hard to harbor hatred for those who earnestly work for their benefit. As a result, they don't shun Juyol anymore, In fact, they even openly greet him now. Every single thing he has done there has changed the position he is in, but even then, it only seems to give him more to agonize over. Over the years, the three have grown at their own pace, which makes Aesir quite happy. However, along the way, it seems like they have gradually lost people along the way as well. Since these old fogies are the first to have condemned Juyol before, Juyol ended up asking Aesir in a duel if Aesir plans to rectify the way he humiliated him 3 years ago. Just as the fight started, the deep emotions emitted in each other's aura covered the whole field. As the fight intensifies, Juyol finally shows off what he truly has. Flame and sword working in unison, a sight that Aesir has been wanting to see for the longest time already. But in the end, he missteps once again, causing him to fail eventually. However, to his surprise, instead of getting killed by Aesir, he was actually set free and allowed to go back home to Dahlia. What makes this farewell more emotional is that Shuro and Selang were the ones who sent him off. 2 years later, everyone is slowly growing fast. Selang has been improving her skills and has gotten strong over the years. And yet, Aesir still has no grasp of what it is she wants, or what it is she thinks. So Aesir wondered if maybe she had the freedom she desired from the very start. These past 2 years, Dahlia and Balm have resumed their mutually beneficial trade. Apparently, Juyol took power as the leader of Dahlia, while Shuro became a real expert at swordplay. All that to say, there's nothing keeping Aesir here anymore. As a result, he finally gets back to his journey, moving on from the plains. But one thing is for certain, he's leaving this place with a nice story to share.
While running away, the MC thinks about life. It's like an egg.
All right, today is a topic from Preach, a rarity.
Sorry, I'm the DA. I was going 55 coming home from work.
The DA's district attorney, so she's a high-ranking lawyer who generally prosecutes criminals.
55 and a 35.
I don't really care.
What? Okay. Yo! Can you come? So she was going 20 miles. She was going 55 in a 30 zone.
Yeah, for the people that do kilometers, 35 is like a 50 kilometers, 55 kilometers, and she was doing 50, so it's like doing 80 in a 50.
Can you please come over here? You're on. This is on a traffic stop, ma'am.
Yes, it is. You can call Dennis Kohlmeyer right now.
Okay, I'm telling you why I stopped you. You didn't stop at all. Did you not hear my lights or sirens or anything?
No, I didn't actually. I was on the phone.
Okay, well, you're not supposed to be on the phone while you're driving either.
Yes, I am with the hands-free. Absolutely.
Okay. Why are you so upset at me? I'm doing my job. You just admitted to me that you were going 55 and a 35 on Phillips Road.
Can you please tell him to leave me alone? It's
Officer Christofoli. Can you?
That's privilege, and I'm not talking about the one. I'm talking about the privilege of the rank that you have in society and what you do, right? A certain position goes with certain privilege and stuff like that. When you're abusing, you know you can get away with some stuff like that. Well, you do stuff like that. It's not so much that most people that are in a position stop. They stop. And the police come and then they have this conversation and this and that and that. But to assume and just...
You can say whatever privilege you want. You want to say it's racial, you want to say it's gendered, you want to say it's work. You can say all of them, and I'm fine with all of them. Because when I understand, he tried to pull over. She refused to pull over, which is a felony from what I understand.
Yes!
And she pulled into her driveway. The fact that a conversation is even happening right now is crazy to me.
Yes!
She should be in handcuffs.
Yes!
You know, it's not like she just broke the speed limit. She refused to stop.
Yes! Speak on it.
And from what I understood, they drove for a while before she pulled in, and then she ran inside.
She never stopped.
Now think about this.
Think about this.
Coconuts in Barbados. Right? She gets out of her car, which during a traffic stop...
Hey, yo.
Hey, I'm going to tell you, they tell me all the time, hands on your steering wheel, make sure you're always visible, don't be reaching for nothing. This lady just gets out of her car and starts fiddling around in her garage. I'm just saying, cop is being very, very lenient. But to be fair, police forces don't look the same in every area. If you're in a more rural spot or like suburbs, they won't treat you the same way as they will in a specific city, right? They're going to have a heightened sense of security in certain parts of the world. So, to be fair to the officer, they're not going to operate the same everywhere.
Bro, if I drive in the area that I live in and...
You look like you, though.
And
you look like you.
Good.
I would pull the strap on you too.
Good.
I'd be like, you saw you reaching for anything?
Because if I pull up to my crib and I get out the car,
I'm gonna be honest with you,
it's a wrap.
Those glasses aren't working.
All right, they're not working at all.
Threatening.
They work for my. Of course.
Now you just look like you're a smart person who threatens.
And knows like I know how to use one.
Yeah. So now I really need to use my
It really just looked like I made that one.
Yeah, and you're an all black, like suspicious. And you got dreads?
It's over.
What drugs you hiding in there?
Exactly. It doesn't matter what neighborhood.
I smell weed. I
just cut my grab.
Can you stay over here, ma'am? This is a traffic. This is a legal traffic stop. Do you have your ID?
No, it's in my purse. Here.
You have your purse right there.
No, this is my lunch. Would you talk to Dennis? This is ridiculous. Just go away.
Hello, sir. Good, ma'am. Can you please stay at the back? This is a legal traffic stop. Can you please stay over here?
No. Hey, baby, get your little guy out of here.
Sir, I stopped her for going 55 and a 35 on Phillips Road.
On Phillips Road.
And she failed to stop. She drove all the way back home and parked in her garage. And now she's not complying with any of my commands. Ma'am, do not go inside.
Oh my God.
Oh my days. I'm getting stressed out.
I'm sorry.
I'm getting stressed out.
I've seen cops shoot people for way less.
And every time they get shot, every time these people get shot for way less, what do you guys say? He should have complied.
Yeah.
He should have complied.
I'm not gonna lie. This lady went inside. She could have been grabbing a weapon and she about to surprise him. He has a phone in his hand, so he's not even ready for a threat.
Hey, yo.
But the thing is, I could understand this reaction if you're dealing with a child, right? Because contextually speaking, you're not going to treat a child suspect, generally speaking, the way you're going to treat adults. But this lady's getting a pass for engaging in incredibly dangerous ways, and the thing is, the officer just doesn't see her as a threat. Even though we want to pretend like everyone's equally treated, we don't, right? An elderly, older white woman, they're just not going to see her as threatening as Preach. If Preach was doing this stuff, the dude's going for the strap. He's like, what is this guy going to do? That's just a reality. That's a reality of perception.
It's a fact.
You guys know he's going to treat people differently.
At some point, I got arrested, and the cop was asking me for my papers for no goddamn reason, and I was advancing to give him my paper, and he told me to back up, and I was like, you asked me for my paper, now you feel threatened. But I look like what I look like.
Right.
I look like what I look like.
So at the end of the day, is the officer doing the wrong thing? Yes. Based off how protocol should work, there's no time and place where a suspect who's just engaged in a felony should be allowed to walk away from the officer to go into their house and do whatever they want, which could put him at risk.
But if I talk, go ahead. No,
I was going to say, but we live in the real world, and the truth is, These people just treat people differently based off how they look. That's a fact of life. So once you embrace it, you can say it's unfair. We could all agree, but that shit not gonna change.
And also, I'm not gonna give some flack to the police officer, but more so to the police fraternity, because this police officer acting like that and giving leniency to this woman, the minute she said DA, he could get in trouble for shit like that. You know, stuff like that happen, right? Where if you pull over someone or certain people, you could get in trouble. So he's maneuvering this thing the best way he can in order to see if he can get in trouble or not.
Here's your phone back.
I understand the law better than you. Would you just
953. Can you have a supervisor come to the scene?
No, get out of my fucking house.
I don't know why you're acting like this towards me.
Because
Can you please go to the back of the vehicle?
I'm not going to. I'm home. I was okay, 55.
I don't care if you got home. You were supposed to stop at Phillips Road when I pulled you over. When my lights were initiated.
I didn't know you were stopping me. There was lots of other people on the road.
I was right behind you.
What? What? Get the fuck out of here. Ma'am, take your shit and get the fuck out of here, ma'am. Ma'am.
I was born that night, but I was not born last night. Stop the cat. There's not a single person who sees a bunch of sirens right behind them and doesn't know it's for them. This lady said, I didn't know who it was. There's a lot of people on the road. And look at the way she's lying to a police officer. Never forget, this lady is a district attorney. What is she doing on her cases? Y'all, that's the hot take. Oh, what is she doing on her cases? She telling bold-faced, stupid fucking lies without hesitation just to get herself out of trouble. What is she doing for her career?
But wait, but there's more.
She better not keep her job. She better not keep her job, because as a public official, this kind of integrity should never be in place in positions where you have a say over whether or not people go free or not.
There were other people on the road too.
Okay, I was directly behind you.
I'm not dealing with you right now.
Can you please step over here?
I'm not going to.
What is the reason you're so against what I'm doing? I'm doing my job. You say you're a DA?
I am the DA.
Okay.
Okay, let me get you my badge. I am the DA of Monroe County.
Whoa. Reaching into the vehicle, going to grab whatever. Yeah. That's how easily it could happen.
I am the DA of Monroe County.
I understand that, but that doesn't give you a right to go 55 and a 35. And you even admitted to me that you went 50. I understand that, ma'am. I understand that.
You know what? If you give me a traffic ticket, that's fine. I'm the one who prosecutes it, okay? Just go ahead and do it.
Did you hear? Bruh, remember what you said? What is she doing on the cases? She just told you what she does on her cases.
Listen, I ain't saying she gotta go, but she can't work here no more.
And I'm saying she ain't gotta go, but she can't stay. She definitely can't stay.
I understand you're coming home from work.
And half the time I was on the phone with Dennis, telling him, why are you pulling me over?
You're not even supposed to be on the phone to begin with. You should know that.
Wait. First she said, I didn't even know you were pulling me over. No. Now she says she was on the phone with Dennis saying, why y'all pulling? Lie again. Let's keep going.
Lie.
I just showed you my driver's license.
You show me your badge. So I attempted to stop her on Phillips Road. Yeah. Going 55 and a 35. Yeah. Didn't see the plate. I was just keeping an eye on the vehicle because she wasn't stopping. Drove all the way here. Pulled into her garage, got out, was just being aggressive towards me for no reason. I was being respectful.
I want to pull over on Phillips Road. It was just, I figured I'd just pull into my driveway.
But you should know better, right?
I was speeding. I know that.
Okay, so why didn't you just stop like you're supposed to?
Because I didn't feel like stopping on Phillips Road at 5:30.
That's not your choice. You know that.
Well, I made it my choice.
Okay, well. Now you made it a bigger deal than it needed to be. Well, what do you want us to do? Not do our job because it's you?
No, it's fine. I said, write me a ticket. But I was just saying I was not going to stop at Phillips Road at 5:30.
Okay, well, you broke another law because of that, right? And you should know better. That's not a traffic ticket. That's an arrestable offense. All right, ma'am. So I'm issuing you speed in zone, 55 and a 35.
That's fine. I'll take care of it since I'll be prosecuting myself.
Okay.
The audacity again!
Sorry, I skipped to 24 minutes or something. I skipped to the end. Oh my God. So in front of the supervisor, and guess what? She's not even getting arrested, bro. Trash. Absolute garbage. Let me watch. Can we all just take a second to appreciate? Do y'all remember a time before body cams?
Oof.
The only time we ever hear about these stories, we find out about all this corruption all the time, and there's so many footage of this on YouTube that you can find.
Yep.
Is only because body cam footage.
That's
I'm
what-
so grateful that they're now in place. They are great for a lot.
And the thing is, a lot of police forces don't like the body cams because they think it's going to incriminate them. If that was the case, that guy would have probably lost his job. It's a possibility. Maybe not probably, but there's a possibility without the body cam. Right now, you see everything that she admits on cam. If he would have reported that, again, it's just like the same thing that whenever you go against a cop, it's my word against the cop. And you know the cop has a stronger word than me. But in his case, she has a better word than him. And she's fucking up right now.
Yep. No, body cam.
Body cam.
There's a time before, and they used to do fucked up shit and never be caught on
Yeah.
camera. So we're grateful. All right. So apparently apologize.
She has shoes on an apology.
Last Monday, I failed you and the standards that I hold myself to. And for that, I am so sorry. What I did was wrong, no excuses. I take...
I'm not gonna lie, this camera quality's fire. They got a good depth of field, the frame.
They pay for that.
They put some plants in the background to make her seem more likable. They did a good job with this thing. This does not look like what I would expect a D apology video.
The lighting is good too.
Yeah, this is like a professional set.
Oh, that's a firm.
Hey.
No, that's a firm.
Yo, they did a good
A
job.
firm did that.
I take full responsibility for my actions. I fell short of the values I've held for my entire 33-year career.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. As far as apology goes, this is off to like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I've seen some horrible apologies. Yeah. Now I want to see she gonna make some excuses. If she don't, that means whoever her representation is did a good job in telling her to shut the f up.
I didn't treat this officer with the respect that he deserved. All police officers deserve respect. I am truly and sincerely sorry. I had just come from work. I was dealing with 3 homicides that occurred over the weekend. I watched a video where an innocent cab driver was executed.
2 out of 10. 2 out of 10.
Thank you.
2 out of 10.
Thank you.
Fire the representation. Whatever your PR thing. You know. I was like, this is off to a good start. Then came in the flood of excuses.
This is what I did. Oh my God. Oh, let me get out the smallest violin.
Nah, fiddly.
Yo, stop.
Wait, why is it the world's smallest violin? I never understood that reference. I think it's funny, but I don't know why.
Because it's more miserable if it's small violin. A violin.
It don't make sense, but it's provocative. It gets the people going.
No, it don't.
It gets me. Right?
No, the thing that is every time there's a sob story, get out the violin. You know what I mean?
Facts.
But then when you're miserable and you have the world's smallest violin, let me put it against my chin like this. I hardly can take it in. It's so difficult.
I don't get why, but I like it. Like I said, it don't make sense.
It don't make sense,
but it's provocative.
That's what I understand from it.
Okay. Guys in the comments, if you guys understand the world's smallest violin, please explain. Don't Google it, you piece of shit, because I can Google it. Don't Google it. You didn't know. So let's stay in our ignorance. Let's bathe in it.
This is wonderful. Basking in ignorance.
Actually, play the smallest violin for me. There you go, bathing in that ignorance. Let's keep going.
I was still reeling from a frightening medical concern that my husband received that afternoon. But we all had bad days.
Shit! Oh, fuck!
Was your husband also suffering from a severe bout of no accountability? Bitch, shut up. Shut your mouth.
Shut your bitch.
Shut your mouth. You committed a felony. If the people you were prosecuting came with these rinky-dink excuses, you'd still prosecute the shit out of them. You are asking us to show you the leeway that you as a district attorney would never show criminals. That is disgusting.
And despicable.
But we all had bad days and stress, and it was wrong for me to take it out on an officer who was simply doing his job. While I previously apologized...
No. Okay, here's the thing. And this is actually super important, okay? I can understand people having a bad day.
Yeah.
I could understand that when that manifests, it doesn't always manifest in the best ways. Why was your first idea of using your power to get out of a ticket? Why was your first instinct, the first thing to just use your leverage and your position to get out of that? That tells me that's not the first time you did that. You were too comfortable. You didn't hesitate. You ignored all the lights. I don't care how stressed you are. You only engage in that behavior if you're that comfortable. You've already been there before. So this is not the first time for her, and it probably won't be the last. Because this is a pathology of, I have power, I think I am better, therefore I will exert that power. That's the thing. So you can't just use the fact you had a stressful day. There's a character defect that's there. I think that's important, because it's crazy to me that you have a bad time and your first instinct instantaneously is corruption.
Straight up.
That don't come from nowhere.
And you knew exactly what to do in there. Oh yeah, you're gonna persecute it yourself. My girl, I Googled your address. Go to Chuck E. Cheese, there's one around the corner. You're a rat.
I've had bad days too.
Rat.
I've had bad days.
Jesus.
I don't take it out on my employees.
Nah, B.
I play League of Legends. And I mentally abuse myself. That's what I do. Okay? Yes, that is. It's mental abuse to play that game. You would understand because you don't play.
I don't play.
Don't play.
I won't.
It's like the Amanda Seales interview. Stop.
Wow.
Okay? All this to say, there's something wrong. And it's not because you had a bad day. I had a bad day. I had a bad day, so I hit my wife.
Yeah.
No. Something's wrong with you.
That's crazy, Dink.
You don't just do corruption because you had a bad day.
You could lose your whole ass job.
Okay, I just want to make that clear. Let's keep watching.
I'm sorry. Police already have a tough job, and that day I made this officer's job harder. To the community, I owe you full transparency. Here's what I'm doing to hold myself accountable. First, I already pled guilty to the speeding ticket, and I will willingly pay the fine. Next, I'm referring the entire matter to a district attorney from another county for review, and will fully cooperate with that investigation. I'm going to self-report this incident to the grievance committee, and I will cooperate with their investigation. Finally, if one of my assistant district attorneys had acted this way, I would have disciplined them. So I'm disciplining myself. I will take ethics training to remind myself that professionalism matters. I've been humbled by my own stupidity, and I'm fully to blame. I will make this right. I ask for your forgiveness.
Everybody's asking for them, not for them. For everybody.
Final rating: 4 out of 10. Carry.
Everybody's not. What they're asking is for you to lose your job. That's what the people are saying. People are like, "Yo, get this bitch out. Get her out." And I agree. I can understand for all the reasons that we stated.
Hey, listen. The fact that she thinks ethics training is a justifiable response to corruption is crazy to me. I'm sorry, if I'm on the job and I steal or I use my position to do something that's really shady or to get out of stuff, I'd probably get fired. You guys would at home as well. I don't understand why people leeching off tax dollars gets to be any different. Get this bitch out of here.
Please.
Get this motherfucker out of here. And also to the cops who let her off, you guys need to be disciplined too. Because
you need to be fast on the trigger.
And she committed a felony. And because she has a position of authority, you guys bent over backwards to not do nothing.
You didn't
That's
arrest
also
her.
wrong.
Yep.
You guys didn't follow protocol because you were kind of afraid. That's also wrong because it tells the regular citizens that you're supposed to protect and serve, that your own people, you're going to treat them so drastically different. And I don't fuck with that either. That's my cut. Anything else?
Everybody can get it.
Yeah. That bitch got it.
Bad endings from that game where the girl is no simple villainess. In a world that fell into despair, she wanted to destroy it all. The world's mid-level boss, the Witch of Calamity, Yon Hanul. In the scenario where they fail to kill her, every being in the world will cease to exist, leading to the bad ending. On a sunny, ordinary spring day, a new semester was beginning in a 5th grade elementary class. The teacher announced the arrival of a new student. That mundane, everyday life crumbled all too soon. Our protagonist noticed that their new classmate had an insanely faint blue color, a round rabbit tail, and long rabbit ears held high on her head. The kid then introduced herself as Yon Hanul. That day, after observing his new classmate and hearing her share her hobbies, reading, listening to music, and dramas, he remembered his past life. However, there was no reason for him to dwell on nostalgia, since standing in front of him was someone with a more mature voice than before. When she expressed her hope for them to get along, he remembered the witch stating that such a rotten world is better off disappearing. This made him certain that the Witch of Calamity who brought the world to an end was in front of him, the mid-level boss, Yon Hanul. He was so certain that he couldn't deny it even if he wanted to and thought that they were doomed. Brave Hearts is a game that our protagonist used to enjoy in his past life. It was about a boy dreaming of becoming the best hunter, the fighting spirit's apprentice, Kang Hanbyul. This school action RPG game, set 200 years after a cataclysm, features monsters and hunters in a world where science and magic coexist. To become a hunter, our protagonist enrolls in Joomgang Academy, located in Education Town, and encounters multiple scenarios. Until that point, it resembled a stereotypical youth school life plot, but the story wasn't all that bright because the game had as many as 44 endings, most of which were world collapse scenarios. Braveheart had one more significant problem. It featured a soft-hearted and cowardly swordsman character who could never fully demonstrate his abilities. Completely useless and annoying, he would flee during battles. An innocent boy who doesn't know how to hate, and even when bullied, he remained a frustrating crybaby who never thought to defend himself, the bane of the protagonist's party. That character is our protagonist, the Rabbit of the Divine Sword Arts, Du Kyunwoo. Our protagonist wonders why he has to be such a problematic character if he was reincarnated. As if that weren't enough, he ended up in the same class as that dangerous character. He cries under his desk, thinking that no matter how hard he tries, it is beyond his abilities. Suddenly, their teacher called him, which shocked him. Tearingly, he looks at Yon Hanul, who was standing shyly. He knows that Hanul, who became the Witch of Calamity in the game, was a character who seemed to bear the suffering of the whole world. Abandoned by her parents at birth, ridiculed and regarded as an eyesore, she received not an ounce of affection from others, leading to a lonely and weary life. All of it happened due to a Mana disaster, and being born with mutated DNA, she was an Ain. He remembered hearing that an Ain's appearance and DNA do not match their parents, but he was convinced that abandoning Hanul was too cruel, helping him understand why Hanul became the Witch of Calamity. However, he knows he can't sit by and let the world's downfall happen. He thinks the easiest solution would be to eliminate Hanul before she becomes a calamity, but he doesn't want to resort to that, making him wonder if there is any other way. He then gets an idea. His teacher then tells him to choose a classmate he wants to sit next to, and do so if they agree. This directive makes him think that he must change Hanul's way of thinking. As he walks towards her, he remembers that Hanul's unfortunate circumstances and environment led her to resent the world. However, if it was now, a time when the game's story hasn't begun, his actions could potentially change the future. He knows that among the villains of the game, Yon Hanul possesses the ability to destroy the world. He greets her, and she looks at him confusedly while he is busy thinking that he will help Hanul not to be pessimistic about the world. He then asks her if he can sit next to her, thinking that if it progresses and he brings her to his side, he can reinforce his strength. She is confused and stutteringly asks if he is talking to her. He knows there are 5 years left until the start of the game's story, so before enrolling in the academy, he has decided to become friends with Yon Hanul. By guiding her to the right path, he hopes to turn her from a calamity into a blessing. He grabs the chair next to her and sits down, smilingly telling her that she will be his partner from today onwards, and that she should take care of him. He then introduces himself to her as Du Kyunwoo, and that's how Kyunwoo became the childhood friend of the mid-level boss. When their classes ended, he stared at her as she picked up her bag, wondering how he could get closer to her. She asked him if he could stop looking at her, to which he apologized, embarrassed, wondering if he had stared at her for too long. As she walked away, he once again stared at her, thinking he should stop overthinking and just directly ask her to come to his house. However, he then noticed her small tail, and when she stutteringly called him, he jumped a little in shock and asked what it was. She walked closer to him and he asked what was wrong, but instead, she questioned why he was sitting next to her. He replied that it was because he wanted to be friends with her. She was stunned upon hearing his answer and shyly asked why he wanted to be friends with her. He responded that he just wanted to be friends, asking what else it could be, noticing that her ears popped up. She stutteringly expressed confusion about why he wanted to be friends with someone like her, especially since he was from a famous swordsmanship family. He silently stared at Hanul, who seemed sad. Then, remembering something, he happily shouted Mongshil to her, telling her that she was as cute as a rabbit he once had and that he really liked rabbits. She resembled one of them. She shook upon hearing this and, with a flushed face, shouted that she was not a rabbit. She then ran to the door, making him wonder if his comment had upset her, but he immediately apologized. Before she exited the door, she stopped and stutteringly told him that she would see him tomorrow. She then ran away, leaving him relieved that she wasn't angry with him. A moment later, as he walked down the street, he couldn't believe that he had entered the world of the game. He wondered why he couldn't see his status window if the world was still a game. He then checked behind him and shouted, "Status window." Suddenly, the system popped up in front of him, and he decided to take a closer look. He was then surprised to see that Do Kyunwoo's abilities were quite impressive for his young age, with physical strength at 37, muscle strength at 34, endurance at 32, agility at 43, mana at 30, and luck at 25. Convinced that his abilities were actually quite good, he wondered why Kyunwoo was constantly bullied with such capabilities, but he acknowledged that it was a fresh start, far superior to his previous life. A moment later, he arrived at his mansion and upon entering, shouted, "I'm home." The lady of the house greeted him along with the maid and asked how school was and if everything was okay. He was stunned to see the lady, but rushed to hug her. She asked worriedly what was wrong. He knew that he was not living his past life, nor should he think he was living in a game, so he decided he should fully embrace his life as Do Kyunwoo. He then told the lady it was nothing and that he just felt grateful to have her. She advised him that if something happened, he should tell her, and instructed him to wash up and that she would prepare a snack before he headed to the sword training academy. He replied okay and ran to his room, walking upstairs knowing that he needed to embrace his role as Do Kyunwoo. What he needed most right now was to master the Beast King style, a sword technique that represented a prestigious swordsmanship family like his. Like a lion reigning over all the beasts, this technique was focused at the tip of the sword and was also the technique that made Kyunwoo the greatest swordsman. He then called for Mongshil, his male rabbit. Getting closer, he took the rabbit out of its cage, noticing that Mongshil resembled Hanuel. He thought to himself that he should completely master the Beast King style. A moment later, in the training room, he noticed there were few people around and realized he was early. He knew that these sword training academies operated in several cities, and people outside the family learned conventional swordsmanship, not the Beast King style, which was why so many attended the training academy. He wondered why everyone stopped what they were doing and looked in the same direction. There, he saw Du Xian, the Du family's sword deity, known as Lightning Flower, 2 years his senior and the most promising prodigy among all the current Du family children. In the game, Xian is a student at Jumgang Academy who becomes the strongest swordsman after graduation, and a strong ally of Du Kyunwoo. He pondered why Xian was there, but realized that, being a sword training academy of the Du family, it wasn't unusual for her to be present. He hung up his shirt, knowing they would soon see each other often, and decided to focus on practicing the Beast King style. He grabbed the training sword and began. Positioning himself, he swung his sword and executed the Beast King style's first form, counting each repetition until he reached 10. He paused, wondering if Xian would be impressed by his practice, enjoying the sweat and fun of the exercise, when he suddenly heard someone asking, "Who is that?" One kid derisively inquired what was wrong with him, while another teasingly asked if a rabbit was now practicing too. He then saw Wu Jumdong, who was eating, questioning if it was really the rabbit, Wu Yundong asking why he was there so early, and Wu Dongdong questioning whether he could use his skills in a real fight and betting that he couldn't catch even one rabbit. He knew these 3 identical triplets were the extra characters called the Cerberus in the game, and they were the kids who bullied him, spurred on by his cousin Du Seungwoo's influence. Frustrated by their presence, he realized it was the first time he couldn't focus due to their teasing. One of the triplets pressed him on why he wasn't responding. He understood that their taunts weren't the only reason he couldn't concentrate. He was also angry at himself for allowing the bullying. He remembered everything that happened to Kyunwoo in his past life and questioned why he had never fought back against their harassment. The triplets had once hurt him, telling him that the head of the Du family must be ashamed of him, that he was a disgrace to the family, and that they felt sorry for his parents. This memory reminded him that he hated hurting people. Dongdong mockingly asked what the point of swinging his sword was. He also suggested they should become his sparring partners, with Yundong teasingly offering their help. Knowing the human body is not weak at all, Kyunwoo told them they should spar lightly as if it were a real game. A moment later, the other kids were in shock when he executed his Beast King style technique, the charging stance, and struck Jumdong in the stomach. Jumdong was thrown back, and Dongdong, worried, called out to him, noting that his nose was bleeding. Yundong stutteringly asked what was wrong with him. Dizzy, Jumdong told his brothers that he couldn't see well. Angrily, he questioned Jumdong if he expected to be the end. He then urged them to quickly pick up his swords and stand up. Dongdong, who was checking on his brother, remarked that Kyunwoo was quite weird, while Yundong was horrified, telling his brothers that Kyunwoo had changed. He reassured them not to exaggerate and to stand up because people don't die from that much. Kyunwoo then reminded them that he, who had been hit by them in the past, could assert this. Yoondong shouted, asking why he was doing this to them and if he was crazy. Yoondong then reminded him that they had powerful backing and questioned if he thought he'd let this slide. Hyunwoo coolly asked if they were referring to his cousin, Do Seungwoo, and if they thought Seungwoo would protect them. The triplets were shocked when they heard this and remembered a time on the street when they shouted about becoming hunters, and Seungwoo told them that the fees for hunter education were too high and realistically speaking, it was unreasonable. Joomdong mentioned that they heard talents are sponsored, and Dongdong excitedly asked if that meant the fees would be free. Seungwoo had asked them if they wanted to get sponsored, to which they all agreed. Seungwoo then told them that he would handle it and that it was nothing difficult. However, he noted that they were in the same school as Kyunwoo, which meant they would see Kyunwoo often. Kyunwoo then told the triplets that he had just been letting himself get bullied before, and it also seemed they had forgotten that he was part of the Do family too, which meant it was easy for him to remove them from his family's sponsoring list if he chose to. He then asked them if they really thought that Seungwoo was the only one who could do it. The triplets were horrified, wondering how things had turned out this way. Suddenly, their teacher called them punks and demanded to know what they were doing and how many times he needed to tell them not to spar without permission. The teacher then told him that even if he was not a model member of the Do family, he shouldn't be fighting, but Kyunwoo simply pointed to the triplets and replied that they started it first. This left the teacher confused, but Kyunwoo asked if he was expected to just stay still and endure their bullying when he was a Do just as much as they were. The teacher then asked the triplets if they really had been picking on Kyunwoo. Initially stunned, they glanced away to think, and then all admitted that they had started it. Confirming that Kyunwoo was right, they had cursed at him, and Kyunwoo was not at fault. This left the teacher looking at them confusedly, while Kyunwoo, feeling refreshed from the admission, thought to himself that he should have stood up for himself earlier. The next day, he arrived at school and walked into the classroom, wondering if he had arrived too early. He then looked to his side and saw Hanwoo alone, deeply engrossed in her book. He stared at her for a moment and greeted her. She shyly covered her face with the book and greeted him back. He then sat next to her, determined to try his best to befriend Hanwoo that day. He commented that she was early every day and always reading books, then asked if she really liked reading that much. She replied yes and asked him if he liked reading too. He responded that he was not really into books, but more into web novels, which confused her. When she asked why he joined the book club, he replied that it was because she had signed up. She said she understood, but then shyly asked him to repeat what he said. He playfully asked if she read web novels too. She stutteringly admitted yes, but explained that she didn't have much pocket money, so she could only read the free ones. Remembering that she lived in an orphanage, he decided to change the topic to avoid offending her, and asked what drama she liked. She replied that she enjoyed the drama Luxury House, and asked him how he knew she liked dramas. He reminded her that she had mentioned it during her introduction. Surprised that he remembered, she wondered why he was talking to her and if it was because he didn't have any friends either. She suspected that Kyunwoo was only fascinated because she was an Ain and feared that he too would eventually lose interest. Seeing her become downcast at the thought, he noticed her ears and wondered if she would mind if he asked to touch them. He then realized she really resembled Mongshil and got an idea. He asked her if she wanted to see a video of Mongshil, and when she asked if that was his rabbit, he told her he had taken a cute video of Mongshil the day before. She expressed interest in seeing it, and he showed her the video, explaining that when rabbits are in a good mood, they jump around excitedly in what is called a binky. She was amazed to see it and commented on how cute Mongshil was. He noticed her rabbit ears stand up again, so he asked her if she wanted to come to his house to see Mongshil. She immediately replied yes, but then hesitated when she realized what she had agreed to. He then raised his little finger as a promise and suggested they play at his house after school. His face turned red as tomatoes, and she thought she should refuse because she didn't want to relive past negative experiences. But after school, she was amazed and surprised when she saw his house, remarking that it was like the one in Luxury House, the drama she watched. Kyunwoo's mother then came out and asked Hanwoo if she was Kyunwoo's friend, welcoming her warmly. Kyunwoo greeted his mother happily, while Hanwoo was in shock, remembering how her old friend's parents had told them not to play with Ains and warned her not to just befriend anyone. Kyunwoo's mother told Hanwoo that it was the first time Kyunwoo had brought a friend over and expressed how happy she was, encouraging her to have fun. Kyunwoo then asked his mother if she could make them tteokbokki, to which his mother happily agreed. He grabbed Hanwoo's hand and urged her to come in quickly, despite knowing that Kyunwoo's curiosity might not last. Hanwoo still didn't want to let go of his hand. Inside, she was shocked to see that his house was incredibly spacious. They then ate tteokbokki together and played with Mongshil, which made her very happy. Hours later, Kyunwoo's father came home and announced cheerfully that he was back. Kyunwoo's mother mentioned that he was a bit late today, and Kyunwoo greeted his father, who acknowledged his tardiness and asked why Iyun was rolling on the floor crying earlier, upset that she wanted to see her rabbit sister too. Kyunwoo explained that his friend had come over today, but Iyun wasn't home, which is why she was upset. Kyunwoo then approached his father and asked if they could spar after dinner. His father was initially surprised but then excitedly said he had been wondering when he'd get to play with him, especially now that he was in 5th grade. Kyunwoo expressed his desire to see how much he had improved and also to experience actual combat. His father, taken aback, asked if he really meant actual combat, to which Kyunwoo replied yes and added that he'd like to face some real monsters. A moment later, his father asked him why he suddenly wanted to spar and told him that he didn't need to be impatient because it was not yet his time to face the real thing. His father also inquired about his motivations. Kyunwoo looked at his hand, knowing that in 5 years, he would enter the Du Family Sword Academy headquarters and inevitably face crises while solving various incidents alongside the protagonist, Kang Hanbyul. For this, he needed a good grasp of actual combat. He was sure that the other kids in the Du family had already gained their combat experience, and he was far behind them, so he knew he needed to catch up now. When he didn't answer, his father looked at him and asked if it was because of the incident at the sword training academy just now. His father then seriously told him that he heard about the fight at the academy, and that the kid he fought was seriously injured. However, he reassured Kyunwoo that he had done nothing wrong. Shocked upon hearing this, Kyunwoo saw that his father seemed more interested in the truth than in scolding him, but he knew that he would never fight without reason. He then replied that he had been taught from a young age that the sword from the divine swordsmanship of the Du family was meant to protect and save people, and he had taken that lesson to heart. He believed that he wouldn't have this notion if he hadn't reflected on his past life and the lessons from it, and thinking about the future had changed his mindset. He then asked his father if he shouldn't be able to protect himself and how someone who can't protect themselves could protect others. His father asked if that was the reason he fought, to which he confidently replied yes and explained that he could protect not only himself but others as well, and for that, he needed to face real monsters. His father smiled upon hearing his answer and told him that he was not wrong and his reasoning was completely valid. His father then patted his head and told him that he had changed a lot. He asked his father if he would help him, to which his father replied that he would, but there was a condition. He asked his father what it was. His father pointed the training sword at him and told him to prove that he had developed enough skill to face a real monster. His father then said he wouldn't use mana and wouldn't move more than 5 steps, so he should feel free to pounce. He asked his father about using the Beast King style, and his father replied that he would only use the basics, to which he responded that he understood. He hesitated about the conditions set by his father but was glad that his father told him not to hesitate to use the sword if necessary. His father then teasingly told him to attack, and he decided to do exactly as his father instructed. He exhaled to calm himself and positioned his training sword. He then swung his sword at his father, who easily blocked it without moving, causing him to be thrown off balance a little, but he managed to land perfectly. He then bent his knees, jumped high, and launched another attack on his father, but his father blocked it again. His father then pushed him slightly away and told him that it wasn't going to work, but he immediately launched his sword without going down and swung at his father, who jumped away to dodge it. When he saw his father just land, he knew it was the right time, so he immediately launched an attack again, but his father blocked it. As his father began to speak, telling him that he was going to use it, he struck his father on the side without letting his father finish his words. His father looked at his side, seeing that he had managed to hit him. His father then jumped away, holding his side in pain, and called him a brat, telling him that he had allowed the hit, but that it was really hard. Exhausted, he asked his father if he could acknowledge his ability, but his father just told him that he had really grown up and didn't even hesitate to hit his own father. He laughed and asked if he passed, to which his father shouted affirmatively, of course, calling him a rude brat. The next morning, his father told his mother that they would be leaving and would probably return home before dinner. His mother worriedly asked if he was sure about sending Kyunwoo there, questioning if Kyunwoo was too young, and if it wasn't too early for him, while Iyun shouted that she wanted to go too. He and his father were both stunned upon hearing his mother and sister. His father then told his mother that he thought it would be fine, to which he agreed. His mother then told him to be careful and not to overdo it, to which he replied affirmatively, telling his mother not to worry because he would be back later. They entered the car, and his father asked him if he was ready, suggesting they head to the clan academy, to which he replied affirmatively. His father then started driving. He remembered that, according to the game settings, the world had become dramatically unstable since the time of the Calamity Change, heavily influencing the world. This instability began as monsters started pouring out from the distorted dimension, leading to a dungeon being transformed on the other side. In that process, when the distorted dimensions of different worlds meet, a gate is created. He knew that if this phenomenon wasn't resolved in time, the world inside the gate would explode and scatter into reality. An outbreak is a phenomenon where the world in the gate explodes and scatters out. It differs from dungeons, and if they fail to conquer it within the time limit, it will significantly impact the ending. He knew that to reach the desired ending, they also needed to pay attention to the gate erosion rate, which was necessary for character growth as well. His thoughts were interrupted when his father told him that they should grab the key first after arriving. He asked his father where the gate key was, and his father replied that it was kept in the warehouse. He knew that once they cleared a gate, they obtained a gate key with which they could clear it again, a feature created by the game developers for players who wanted to re-clear the gate. He pondered whether this setting was still in function after his reincarnation. A moment later, his father stopped the car and told him that they had arrived. They got out, and his father introduced him to his workplace, the Regulus clan. The Regulus clan was established during the catastrophe by the first head of the Du family. It now has several branches across the country. Access to the dungeon gates and monster habitats, managed by the government, normally requires a hunter's certificate. He knows that since he doesn't possess a certificate yet, he shouldn't be able to enter the gate. However, his father, who is the branch manager, is greeted warmly by the employees, making his situation within the clan unique. He thinks he doesn't need to adhere strictly to those restrictions and, with his father's help, can just go through the gate that is kept by the clan. Suddenly, he heard someone shout excitedly, and a hand grabbed him. A lady then hugged him, asking if he was their manager's son. While the other employees surrounded him, glad that he looked all innocent, a good thing he didn't take after his father. One employee began to pinch his cheeks, telling him how cute he was and that they wanted to hug him with all their might. A moment later, he was showered with kisses by the employee hunters when the lady asked his father if he intended to enter the gate with his son, leaving him wondering if all the hunters were so affectionate. The lady then tells his father that they shall access room 2 as planned, and his father tells him that they should go. However, he is confused when he sees the key and asks his father why the key he just received is white. He remembers that the gate's levels of difficulty are differentiated by 7 different key colors, starting from the easiest level, white, followed by gray, yellow, green, red, blue, and the most difficult, black. His father tells him that white will be challenging enough for him, to which he replies that he understands, but truthfully, he wants to attempt the gray level. His father then opens the gate and tells him that they should go in. He then saw another gate inside, and his father explained that it was an artificial gate, and that if he inserted the key obtained by clearing a dungeon there, the gate would open. He was amazed to see it and remembered that they could upkeep a large clan thanks to the maintenance costs, realizing how powerful his family was. His father then called him over seriously to tell him that they were going to enter the gate now and asked if he was sure he was ready. His father advised him to think it through again because once they were in there, they could not leave until they had cleared the dungeon. He silently looked at his father for a moment and confidently replied that he had given it enough thought already. His father smiled worriedly at him, but before inserting the key, he asked his father if he would intervene if he was unable to clear it. His father replied that even if he failed, he would have his back, so he shouldn't overdo it and make him get scolded by his mother. His father then inserted the key and activated the gate. The gate slowly opened, and as he entered, he saw crystals everywhere, shining brightly. He looked around in amazement. It was his first time entering a gate, and then the system popped up, showing him that he had entered the White Level's Pink Crystal Cave, and his mission was to eliminate 15 goblins ranked 0.1. As he read the system, he wondered if the conditions for clearing were simple because it was a white level gate, and asked where the goblins might be. Suddenly, he heard a sound behind him, quickly drew his sword, and positioned himself while holding the real sword, knowing it was dangerous and he should be cautious. He then waited, staying on guard so he wouldn't be taken by surprise. He was then surprised to see his father in front with the goblins tied up. He ran to his father and asked if he had captured all the goblins. His father replied that they were all there. He counted the goblins and confirmed there were 15 in total. He calmed himself down and told his father he was ready. His father said they should begin then, and since he couldn't handle them all at once, they should start with one. His father walked towards the smallest goblin, telling him it might be the weakest of the group, but he shouldn't be careless and must stay alert. But before his father could finish his sentence, the goblin freed itself in anger, surprising his father a little. The goblin then rushed at him while he asked his father if he was referring to the fact that they are fierce, to which his father agreed and reminded him not to forget it. He knew that he possessed knowledge from games, but as a member of the Divine Swordsmanship Du family, he also held knowledge about monsters, and he thought these creatures must have understood that their only chance to survive was to fight him. The goblin then grabbed a sharp crystal, making him realize it was desperate enough to use a crystal as a weapon, and he knew he had to be cautious because a small mistake could be disastrous. He then bent down, thinking that since it was an actual fight, he should put in his everything. He then activated his Beast King style basic technique, 5th form piercing stance, and thrust his sword at the goblin's head. He pierced his sword into its head, and the goblin kneeled on the ground. The goblin then lay on the ground dead, causing his father to sigh in relief. He tightly grasped his sword and proudly declared that one was down for now. As a party member of the main character, Kang Handiel, Duke Hyunwoo has one restriction. There is a feature called Gift in the game, and among the passive skills that define the character, Duke Hyunwoo's gift is Evasion Instinct. At first glance, it seems like a useful ability. His father then released 2 goblins, and as they faced him, he contemplated that Evasion Instinct is literally the ability to move one's body instinctively to avoid attacks when sensing a life-threatening crisis. While it appeared to be a useful ability for Duke Hyunwoo, who wields a sword, his fearful and fragile character often leads him to disobey commands, causing the gift to be rejected. Due to this gift, players generally did not include Duke Hyunwoo in their party unless it was unavoidable. The Evasion Instinct also caused Hyunwoo to defy player commands, leading to frustration. However, there is an event in the story that triggers Hyunwoo's awakening. Later in the narrative, Hyunwoo gains control over his gift after the awakening. A character who awakens late becomes a remarkably strong morale booster, and later, Hyunwoo demonstrates his overwhelming ability to defeat enemies by avoiding most of their attacks. He remembers that it was said raising Hyunwoo well could make the later part of the game easier, but he knows it is still a long way off, and if he does nothing but wait, it'll be too late. So, he couldn't just sit still and wait. The goblins growled at him in anger, and he stared back at them, knowing he needed to advance his awakening. He knew it might be impossible if it was just a game, but for him, it was reality. He then remembered that when he played the game, he didn't find any situation that triggered the awakening in the later part of the story, so he thought it must not be hard to awaken early. He then jumped closer to the goblins and swung his sword, determined to push himself to the limit. Later, many goblins lay dead on the ground, but he told his father to release the next one. His father suggested they take a rest, but he replied that if it was only to that extent, he was fine. His father sighed and said that if he insisted, they should face all of them while the last 4 goblins stared at him in anger. His father then released them all, and the goblins rushed at him. But they all jumped behind him, catching him off guard. He looked around, wondering if it was a diversion tactic, and noticed that 2 of the goblins were above him, but he couldn't locate the other 2. Suddenly, he felt something approaching from behind. He let his body react for a moment, and his gift, Evasion Instinct, swiftly moved him to the side. Then, something from behind tried to hit him, but he avoided it, and it struck the crystal in front instead. He was stunned in horror when he realized that his body had moved without his conscious will, indicating that his gift had activated. Knowing that the Evasion Instinct had sensed the crisis, he resolved to trust that instinct. He then positioned his feet, ready to deal with the goblins first. Thanks to his gift, he managed to spot where the 4 goblins were hiding and swore he wouldn't fall for their trick again. One of the goblins threw another crystal from behind, but he reassured himself it was fine since his evasion instinct was activated. He dodged the crystal, shocking the goblin who threw it. He then jumped, using the crystal to reach one of the goblins trying to hit him with arrows. He slashed the goblin in half with his Beast King style basic 2nd form attack stance, but was surprised when he looked behind and saw the goblins waiting for him at his intended landing spot with a sharp crystal. He then compressed and rotated the mana within his body, loading the mana that emerged from his heart into his sword, now wrapped by mana. He swung his sword with his Beast King style 1st form Lion Crush cut and successfully slashed the 2 goblins waiting for his landing. He then safely landed on the ground and asked if only one was left, shouting that he'd go straight for it. However, his father told him there was no need to rush and asked what if he got hurt, but he replied that it was okay because he believed he could handle it. His father warned him to be careful since it was the last one and he should be more cautious. He agreed and headed toward the last goblin. A moment later, his father silently watched him, deciding to trust in his son while observing the piles of dead goblins he had slain. He was catching his breath when his father called out to him. The system then displayed that he had cleared the gate and that an exit gate would be generated where the gate key would appear. It also warned that the gate would close in 24 hours. Then, a bright circle of light appeared above them, and within it was the key. The key then landed in his palm, and he saw that it was the same white key they had used. He clenched his teeth and cursed inwardly. His father laughingly asked what was with his face and if he didn't believe that he had cleared the gate. He just called to his father, who responded with a smile and pride. But he merely asked his father if there were any other gates. He then realized that he couldn't use that dungeon for practice until the cooldown was over. As the gate closed, the power inside it was depleted. but he knew that the gate would become active again after replenishing its mana. This made him wonder what he should do next since he hadn't awakened his gift yet. His thoughts were interrupted when his father, Sangjun, told him that he was very surprised and had thought he would stop after 4 goblins, but in the end, he managed to defeat 5 of them easily. Sangjun then shook him while proudly asking, "Whose son are you?" and told him that there was nothing left to do there, so they should clean up and go home. Sangjun headed to the exit and asked for the key, but he hesitantly called out to Sangjun and asked if there was any other gate, leaving Sangjun looking at him confused. He explained that he felt like he was about to awaken his gift and it would be a pity to go back just like that. He asked Sangjun if they shouldn't try clearing another gate if there was enough time left. Sangjun asked him if he just said he seemed to have awakened, to which he replied yes, and suggested that they should do something more challenging. He told Sangjun that he thinks they'll be okay to enter a great grade gate, and that he can now handle 2-rank monsters. Sangjun, looking serious, reminded him that his mother, Jaya, would be furious if she knew he allowed such a thing. Nonetheless, he insisted that everyone will die eventually, prompting Sangjun to question if he really was his son. Sangjun then acknowledged his desire to push himself but warned that fighting a 2-rank monster was too much for him at the moment. However, if it was a white grade gate, it would be fine. He asked Sangjun if that was really what he thought, and Sangjun paused to think before agreeing. He told him that as a swordsman, he understood what he meant, but if he became too ambiguous, he wouldn't achieve anything, which made him happy. He thanked his father, but Sangjun just reminded him that he would step in whenever he was in danger. They then headed to the white grade gate, and he realized that not all white grade gates were the same. Sangjun warned him that it was going to be tough and that he had brought support just in case, pointing to the man who greeted them. He knew that the support consisted of dungeon-specialized magic supporting hunters, who typically used healing or buffs to assist hunters. Sangjun warned him to be cautious, as monsters might rush them immediately after entering the dungeon. Sangjun then asked if he was ready to go, to which he confidently replied yes. They then entered the gate, and the system notified him that he had entered the white grade gate, Pink Crystal Cave, and his mission was to subjugate 15 monster goblins of 1 rank. He looked around and realized it was the same world where he had fought earlier. He was wondering where the monsters were when he felt something approaching and managed to dodge it just in time. Horrified, he wondered what had just happened, but then the system alerted him that numerous monsters had appeared. 4 normal goblins, 7 swordsman goblins, 3 archer goblins, and 1 mage goblin. He noticed that there were 15 goblins, but these weren't ordinary goblins. They had specific roles that drove him crazy. He knew his evasion instinct was activated, and his gift controlled his body. He also knew that if he didn't want to die, he should run away. The man told Sangjun that it might be hard for Kyunwoo and asked if he really left him alone. Sangjun didn't answer, knowing that Kyunwoo had changed recently. In the past, he was easily startled by small things, but lately he seemed different, and Sangjun was convinced that he was stronger now, and it was not a bad change. Sangjun knew that Kyunwoo had grown up to be a kind-hearted kid, but he didn't fit the fierce competition in the Divine Swordsman Du family due to his kind-hearted nature. He always hesitated to hurt others, even if it put himself in danger. Sangjun thought of how his son smiled happily when he received his first sword and how he would cry happily whenever he held a sword. Sangjun then sadly looked at his hand, thinking about how many of Kyunwoo's peers mocked him by calling him a rabbit. Whenever he heard that, he wanted to step in but couldn't. He wondered why Kyunwoo had changed when he became a 5th grader. Jaya had told him that the change was because he liked someone in his class, but Sangjun suspected there must be another reason. Sangjun recalled that while he was contemplating Kyunwoo's situation, someone from the Sword Training Academy had contacted him. The man introduced himself as Kyunwoo's swordsmanship teacher. After hearing the teacher's complaints, Sangjun asked if Kyunwoo had been fighting with other kids under the pretext of sparring, asserting that his son wouldn't engage in such behavior without a reason. The teacher hesitated, guessing that Kyunwoo hadn't told his father because of how he might react, and then revealed that Kyunwoo had been bullied. Sangjun, knowing his son would not harm other kids without cause, scolded the teacher in anger. The teacher tried to dismiss the behavior as typical playful roughhousing that he too had often engaged in. He asked Sangjun if it wasn't natural for children of that age to get absorbed in their own strength and play around. Sangjun, furious, questioned if this meant that Kyunwoo had been bullied by other kids so far and if the teacher was joking about such a serious matter. Sangjun was overwhelmed with anger at the thought of someone from the Divine Swordsman Du family receiving such treatment at the Sword Training Academy. He then demanded to know if someone had instructed the teacher to keep silent about the bullying and who they were. The teacher reluctantly disclosed the identity, and Sangjun realized that Kyunwoo had suffered such humiliation because he didn't hold much power within their family. Sangjun figured out that it was Du Bumjun, his 3rd older brother, behind this. He called Bumjun to confront him about the bullying, but Bumjun dismissively said they were just playing. He sarcastically apologized to Sangjun and promised to tell his son Sungwoo to apologize and not to repeat his actions. Still, Bumjun added that Sangjun must have had a hard time due to his cowardly personality, provoking Sangjun to question whether Bumjun considered this an apology. Bumjun retorted, asking Sangjun what more he should do. Reflecting on the situation, Sangjun realized that while he felt powerless, he was just enduring it alone. So, when Kyunwoo expressed his desire to experience real combat, Sangjun felt proud of him and was glad that his son had decided not to endure the bullying any longer. After Kyunwoo cleared the first dungeon and retrieved the key, Sangjun noticed that he performed better than expected. Although Sangjun had worried that his son might panic and rush, he saw that Kyunwoo could handle the situation calmly and adeptly. Sangjun smiled, acknowledging that his child had been a prodigy since a long time ago. However, as he watched worriedly from above, he remembered that Kyunwoo was still only 12 years old and needed to grow calmly. Suddenly, Sangjun's concern deepened when he saw Kyunwoo get injured in the arm, causing Sangjun to clench his teeth at the thought that his misjudgment had put his son in danger. The man next to Sangjun asked if it wasn't the right time to intervene, noting that Kyunwoo seemed to have run out of energy and that the monster might catch him. However, Kyunwoo remained calm, facing the goblins and challenging them to come at him. Sangjun knew that stepping in would disappoint his son but acknowledged that Kyunwoo was quite skilled for his age and decided to simply encourage him. Sangjun then called out to a man named Hongchul, instructing him to prepare the protection shield magic, to which Hongchul responded that it might be needed at any moment. Sangjun then detailed his plan. The moment the goblin attacked Kyunwoo, they would charge in all at once. He would take out the mage goblin first, while Hongchul was to use the protection shield magic as Kyunwoo dodged the archer goblin. However, Sangjun was stunned to see Kyunwoo's rigid movements, indicative of fear, yet he wondered if his perception was clouded by his own apprehension. As he positioned himself, Sangjun was shocked to witness Kyunwoo slashing the goblins in front of him with his Beast King-style 4th form Lion Needle recursion attack. Before this, Kyunwoo was running away, aware of the danger because the goblins coordinated so well that there was no opening for an attack. However, he knew he couldn't keep fleeing, or he would remain the same fearful Kyunwoo. Positioning himself with his sword, he thought the Beast King-style first form should work, but was annoyed by Kyunwoo's instinctive gift of evasion. His body avoided the goblin attack involuntarily, and the persistent voice in his head kept interfering, warning him of death if he stayed. It told him that if he died there, all his efforts would have been wasted, and that fleeing was his only respite. He noticed this voice restricted his actions and made his body move against his will. When the voice urged him to flee, he tried to command his gift to stop running and to listen to him. He wondered if this was how the real Kyunwoo felt before his awakening, noticing his body torn between will and instinct, feeling as if it would rip into 2 pieces. As one of the sword-wielding goblins lunged at him, the voice screamed at him to dodge, but instead, he swung his sword forward, shouting back at the voice that he must not avoid it. After killing the goblin, he realized he could resist the evasion instinct and that there might be enough distance between them now, unaware of the archer goblin behind him. When the goblin released an arrow, it struck him in the shoulder, leaving him bewildered by the sudden attack. Goblins then appeared in front of him, walking closer and causing him to tremble with fear. He walked backward, not realizing the danger. Back against the crystal behind him, he knew a mistake now could be fatal. Peeking back and seeing a dead end, he shouted in fear. Tearfully, he looked at the goblin in front of him, realizing he might truly die and needed to escape, yet wondering where to run when all paths were blocked. Was this the price of defying his gift? He thought he would die at this rate, and the voice repeatedly told him he didn't want to die. Clutching his sword tightly, he lamented that if he had known it would turn out this way, he would have preferred to remain unaware of his past life. He pondered the difference between his struggles then and now. Knowing he had been blessed with a good life as a divine swordsman of the Du family and a comrade of Kang Hangul, he wondered why he had to be reborn as Du Kyunwoo. He then saw himself reflected in the crystal, crying like a child. This made him wonder if the person in the reflection, shoulders hunched, trembling with fear and shedding tears, was truly him. He felt anger upon seeing his reflection and realized that he absolutely must not recall his past life for no reason. If he hadn't, he'd probably be living aimlessly, with a face showing such despair. He told himself that he didn't want to live like that and had been pushing himself to the limit to overcome his weaknesses and become strong. He then clenched his teeth, wondering how he could forget his conviction and shrivel up like a coward. He resolved not to die in such a way, nor did he want to run away, so he told the voice in his head that they should overcome that fear and move on. The voice in his head urged him to run away, but he planted his foot firmly on the ground, ignoring the voice that told him not to proceed. He then released a blue thunderbolt, telling the voice that he must fight for his life. A notification then appeared, showing him that he had acquired the skill Instinct Control Level 1, which allowed him to control his instincts at will. He began to slash at the head of the goblin in front of him, causing the other goblins to look at him in confusion. He then charged towards them, slashing as he went, and noticed that unlike before, his body could move freely, feeling as if electricity was surging within him. When the archer goblin was about to shoot him again, he rushed toward it, slashing while dodging the arrow. He felt unstoppable. Sangjun, who was watching, wondered what he had just seen. He was sure Kyunwoo had been full of fear just a minute ago, but now Kyunwoo had regained his composure. Hongchul asked Sangjun what had just happened, and Sangjun replied that it was his son's doing. However, Hongchul clarified that he wasn't asking about that. He was curious how Kyunwoo fought so well when the protective shield they had prepared to use against the mage goblin wasn't even required. Hongchul then asked Sangjun if all members of the Du family were like Kyunwoo, but Sangjun could only reply that he wasn't sure either. Sangjun noticed that Kyunwoo could predict where the attacks would come from and even managed to avoid them, making Sangjun guess that he had managed to overcome the crisis and wondered if Kyunwoo had now awakened. In disbelief, Sangjun asked aloud if it was Kyunwoo's gift. Sangjun then thought that to reach an awakening, Kyunwoo must have pushed beyond his limits while being determined to change, and that his determination was truly extraordinary. However, his thoughts were interrupted when Hongchul called out to him. Sangjun turned to see Hongchul and was shocked to see Kyunwoo use his Beast King style first form lion crush cut to kill a goblin. Sangjun asked if the thunder emanating from Kyunwoo was the blue thunder and was stunned when he saw it. In amazement, Hongchul told Sangjun that the divine swordsmanship of the Du family was really impressive and asked if it indeed was the famous blue thunder. However, Sangjun didn't answer, still in disbelief at what he had witnessed, and wondered if it was even possible for a kid to master the blue thunder technique and how one could become that strong in such a short amount of time. Staring at Kyunwoo, Sangjun thought it was impossible. He then asked if Kyunwoo really had awakened when Hongchul noticed a system notification announcing that they had cleared the gate. Hongchul told Sangjun it was a clearance notification, and Sangjun just sighed, still unable to believe what was happening. Exhausted, Kyunwoo lay on the ground and said he was tired to death. Suddenly, the system popped up in front of him, showing that he had pushed his body to the limit, so his physical strength, muscle strength, and agility stats had all risen by 1. However, Kyunwoo thought his stats should have increased during the fight with the goblins, not now. He knew that Brave Hearts was a game where physical strength stats don't increase with leveling up, and that the only way to do it would be through training or sparring in the academy, which was a tricky part of the game. Yet, he thought it had been easy, considering that Brave Hearts aims for replayability, where existing data could be transferred to the next playthrough. He realized it was impossible now that it was not a game. Kyunwoo thought about what he should do next, gain tons of experience and become stronger. Sangjun then sweetly called to him and approached, asking if he was alive, unaware that one of the dead goblins was releasing something shiny from its body. He responded to Sangjun, admitting that he thought he overdid it because he couldn't move at all. Sangjun told him that it was expected after moving like that, expressing his shock at Kyunwoo triggering the blue thunder and speculating that Kyunwoo might be the youngest ever to do so. Surprised to hear this, Kyunwoo asked Sangjun if he had really performed the blue thunder. The blue thunder is a phenomenon that occurs when using the signature sword technique of divine swordsmanship, the Beast King style, where the friction between the man and the atmosphere creates a blue current. Proper posture and speed, the extent of power applied to the sword, and correct activation of the mana circuit are all necessary. It's a phenomenon that only appears when various elements are perfectly harmonized. Kyunwoo then remembered feeling something burst out from him and realized it was the blue thunder. He told Sangjun that he wasn't sure if he could do it again and couldn't really remember. Sangjun reassured him not to worry because having experienced it once, his body would remember, and with continuous training, he would be able to do it again. Sangjun then praised him for doing a great job, but Kyunwoo just stared at Sangjun and asked where Hongchul was. Sangjun replied that Hongchul was working. Shortly after, Hongchul arrived, happily holding something. He told Kyunwoo that he had really been through a lot and, thanks to him, they were able to obtain magic stones. While Hongchul was busy praising him for his blue thunder, he noticed shiny things on the goblin, so he grabbed one and shouted to Sangjun that there was something there. Sangjun told him that he was lucky because he had found a lost stone and explained that a lost stone contains a providence and can be used as material like a magic stone. Kyunwoo remembered that in the game, magic stones were used as currency or for artifacts, but lost stones could be converted into stats, making him wonder what kind of lost stone it was and if he should examine it. The system then showed him that it was the lowest grade agility lost stone, which enhances the user's ability, increases agility by 1, and is effective for users with an agility below 60. He thought it was not bad and he'd like to have it. Hongchul asked Sangjin what if the Lost Stone resonated with Kyunwoo and if they should give it to him. Sangjin told Hongchul that he was still good at navigating those social waters and thanked him. Sangjin then suggested that they should check if the Lost Stones resonate, so Kyunwoo should try infusing it with mana. He then put mana on it, knowing that it was bound to resonate with him, and Sangjin excitedly told him that it was responding, which meant it was his. Hongchul then told Sangjin that he was suddenly craving some beef, making Sangjin shake his head and sigh in silence. Monday morning arrived, and he was in the room, feeling his whole body ache. Ever since the day after the actual combat, he had suffered from terrible body aches, and Jaya angrily asked Sangjin why he ended up like this. He was lying on his desk, realizing only now that the recoil from using the evasion instinct was severe, so he decided to really try to avoid doing it again. Hanwoo then arrived in their classroom and worriedly asked him why he was like this and if he was hurt. He greeted her good morning and told her he was a bit sick over the weekend and had a severe body ache. She worriedly asked him how it happened, if he had taken any medicine, and if he was okay now. He replied that he had an actual combat session over the weekend, and she asked him if he meant fighting with monsters, if it was okay for them to do so at their age, and if it wasn't dangerous. He replied that he was from the Du family, so all his cousins his age had done it, and he was the only one who hadn't yet. She told him that she had some bandages and ointment in her bag, but he told her it was okay because the wounds had healed and asked her why she carried those around. She then replied that she used to get hurt often, though not so much these days. He looked at her and thought that it must be from all the bullying she had experienced. She then got closer to him and told him she would do it. He told her that his wounds had healed and asked her why she bothered, but she just shouted at him to just listen to her and give her his arm. After putting bandages on his face, she told him it was all done, and he shockingly asked her if it was a bandage, but she just told him to stay still because it would make it heal faster. He showed her his medicine while telling her that he was really okay and it was all healed, so if she really wanted to help, she could remind him to take his medicine at lunch. She stared at him in silence for a moment and put a bandage on his arm while telling him that he should let her know if there was more she could do to help him, and since he really looked like he was in pain, she would listen to anything just for today. He tells her that if that was what she said, then he asks her if he can touch her ears, leaving her shocked and causing her to stutteringly ask what he just said. He apologizes to her and tells her it was just a joke, realizing that it might have been too much and that he seemed kind of bold. She thinks for a moment, then grabs his hand and shoutingly agrees to his request. She puts his hand on her head while warning him to just touch her ears quickly, not to linger for too long, and to tell her if it doesn't cheer him up. He stutteringly replies okay and touches her ears, amazed at how soft and fluffy they are. He then enjoys touching them without realizing that he has been doing it for too long. She then jumps away and shouts at him to stop, saying it should be enough to cheer him up. She was red as a tomato, wondering why it felt so good to have her ears touched and if it was because Kyunwoo was used to raising rabbits. She then realized that she almost got completely lost in the sensation while he was caressing her ear, and felt embarrassed about it, but seeing how much he enjoyed it, she guessed that she should let him do it every once in a while. She then jumped a little surprised when he looked at her, making her wonder if he had read her thoughts. He thanked her and told her that he felt energized now. He then asks her what she thinks about them becoming hunters together. She was shocked by his sudden suggestion and asked him if it doesn't cost a lot of money. He replied that he thought she had all the qualities needed to be a hunter and could tell by looking at her that she came from a noble family. She tells him that he is saying weird things again, but he tells her that he has his reasons. He then begins to explain to her that first, she is a demi-human, which means she is physically superior to others. Second, the mana she unconsciously emits feels very dense, suggesting there is a high chance she is good at handling magic. She tells him that she has never released mana, and he can't believe that a Witch of Calamity can't handle magic, so he tells her that every living thing unconsciously emits mana and he can sense it because he knows how to handle it. She asks him if he really means it, and he nods confidently. She then looks at her hand, wondering if she could really become a hunter in the future. She knows that when she turns 19, she will have to leave the orphanage. It would be great if she got adopted, but she understands that as a demi-human, it is unlikely, and becoming a hunter could lead to a successful life with high earnings. However, she also doubts whether she can fight monsters given her fragility. He sighs and tells her there's no need to worry. He promises her that she can do it and that he'll be right by her side, so she shouldn't worry because he'll take care of her. Her eyes light up when she hears this, and seeing him confidently tell her that if she became a hunter, she would be hunting with him and that he believed in her, so she should believe in herself too. She shyly wonders what Kyunwoo sees in her to be so confident, and while it feels weird, it truly makes her feel like she can do anything. She then stutteringly asks him if he will take responsibility. He grabs her hand, telling her that it is settled and they should attend the same middle school, and then enroll in the high school academy together. She shyly asks him if he really means that they should do it together, which he confirms and tells her that they should start by joining a sword academy to build up their strength. She panically asks him if he means she should enroll in a sword academy and reminds him that she doesn't have the money to enroll in such a place. But he simply asks her why she should pay when it is run by their family and tells her that she can attend for free. Confused, she asks him why he is being so nice to her when she doesn't have much to offer him. He replies that he is hoping to benefit from her success later on, making her ask him what he means by that. He tells her that someday, when she becomes a famous hunter, maybe he'll gain some benefits from it, and if he has to give a reason, that's it, nothing more. She stares at him in surprise for a moment and eventually smiles. She then laughingly asks him what he really means and tells him that he is really weird. But the truth is she is really grateful to him. She then asks him if it means that she'll be learning how to use a sword too, but he replies no and tells her that she needs to focus on physical training. Confused, she asks him why. He responds that she should learn magic because she seems to have a talent for it and tells her that it would be better if she had a teacher. After that, their training continued steadily. Once their school ended, they would focus on learning basic swordsmanship or strengthening their endurance at Kyunwoo's family dojo. On days when they didn't go to the dojo, they would train together at Kyunwoo's home, though he often felt like Hanul was coming over for dinner rather than training. He thought that the purpose seemed reversed, but it was good to have some motivation. However, since he was also a beginner with magic, he realized he needed a new teacher and wondered where he could find such a person. He then remembered the Witch of Colors, Hong Yina, who in the game was mainly an instructor teaching elemental magic to academy students. He speculated that at that point, she was likely wandering across the country, known as the Witch of Five Colors. He leaned back in his chair, thinking he'd asked Sangjin to put out some feelers, but guessed he could do nothing but wait, hopeful they would meet soon enough. Suddenly, someone asked him what he was so deep in thought about, and he realized he hadn't even noticed Sangjin was there, which made him shout in surprise and tell Sangjin that he really scared him. Sangjin laughingly asked what he was thinking about so deeply that he hadn't noticed him coming in, and he replied that he was just wondering when he would get to meet the person he had asked him about a while back. Sangjin told him not to be impatient and that they had gotten in touch today, which excited him. Sangjin then informed him that they agreed to visit in a month. However, if they were not satisfied with his skills, they wouldn't teach him. He told Sangjin he was prepared for that possibility, but if he was not talented, there was nothing he could do. Yet, he was confident that wouldn't happen because, even though he was unsure about himself, there was no doubt Hong Yina would show interest in Hanul's talent. Sangjin then mentioned that there was also some bad news, which piqued his curiosity as he noticed his father's concerned expression. Sangjin then revealed that although it had only been a short while since they began, it was the same thing every year, and next week was Parents' Day, so they needed to visit the main family. Sangjin then asked if he was okay with it, but he countered by asking if Seungwoo was coming too. Sangjin confirmed yes and told him that if he didn't want to go, he would go alone. He knows that Do Seungwoo is the one who incited the triplets to bully Kyunwoo. He then asked Sangjin what was next, and just as Sangjin was about to explain, Sangjin noticed his attitude and asked him what he was thinking about. He just creepily smiled, thinking that his cousin's presence was enough reason for him to go to their main family house. May is family month. During the weekend on Parents' Day, after a late lunch, they all headed to the main household of the Shinjeondu. Sangjin told him to keep an eye on his little sister Yiyun to ensure she doesn't cause any trouble, and reminded Yiyun not to try climbing the lion statue like she did last year. She excitedly replied yes, and he affirmed that he would watch her. Sangjin then cautioned him not to stir things up and pleaded with him not to do so, but he merely asked Sangjin when he had ever done so. Sangjin admitted he hadn't, but his recent actions had made him a bit nervous. He reassured Sangjin not to worry, but thought to himself that it couldn't be helped. They were always kept on edge at every family gathering. This is why Jaya and their father become sensitive and wary each time there is a gathering like this. Considering that nothing good had ever happened at these family gatherings, he wasn't surprised. He knew this time would be no different, but he felt compelled to go to the main family house because he needed to acquire courage, no matter what. The day before heading to the main family house, Kyunwoo was training with Hanul and Yiyun. He reflected on his progress, acknowledging that although he had learned to control his instincts, it was not enough. He refused to be swayed by that damned evasion instinct again. He realized he needed a skill that could properly control it, and there was one that fit the bill: courage, a skill that resists the power emitted by others. He knew there would be times when powerful beings emitted pressure by releasing their aura and killing intent to intimidate their opponents. When exposed to such pressure, players' stats would decrease, often leading to defeat in battle. Courage not only allows them to resist it but also increases their concentration and evasion rate during life-threatening moments. He knew he had to learn the skill, courage, without question because it was the perfect combo when paired with his evasion instinct and instinct control, which was ideal for combat against Jinwoo. He'd like to learn it before heading to the academy, but he wondered where he could acquire it. He also knows there is a problem because the conditions to acquire courage are quite troublesome. The in-game requirements are as follows. First, the character trying to acquire courage must form a party with only one companion, who is stronger than themselves. Second, after meeting the first condition, the character must face an opponent who emits pressure without any external assistance. Although the stronger companion, Kang Hanbiel for example, shouldn't intervene in the battle until courage is acquired, this is not an absolute requirement. Remember, in the game, Hanbiel is the protagonist, so excluding him from the party isn't an option. He knows that courage can be obtained with a certain probability by dodging the opponent's attack, and the chances of acquiring it increase if the opponent is strong, making it quite difficult to obtain. He thinks it would be easier to obtain it while he is still relatively weak, similar to when he mastered instinct control. However, the problem is, he doesn't know where to find a strong opponent who emits pressure, and he knows that facing such a foe alone could be disastrous. He then starts to think of someone who could emit pressure without killing him, a strong person who wouldn't kill him. He then thinks of someone perfect for the description and smiles, knowing that there is someone like that at the Shinjiam-do. A moment later, they arrive at Shinjiam-do, and they both get out of the car. People line up on their side respectfully and greet them politely. Sangjin asks the butler how he has been and how his brothers are, to which the butler replies that currently, except for Du Wujin's family, everyone else has gathered. He asks the butler if his eldest brother hasn't arrived yet, but the butler simply tells him that he'll show them to their room. Jaya asks the butler about the family elders, and the butler replies that they are in the library having a chat. Sangjin tells them that it was as expected and asks them what they want to do now. He replies that staying in the room would be boring, so they should go to the training ground instead, which Iyun agrees to and tells Sangjin that she'll go too. Sangjin then tells them that he'll see them later and warns them not to play too rough with the others there. Sangjin then tells him that he is counting on him, and he replies that he won't stir trouble as long as they don't provoke him. He then asks Iyun if they should head out, and Iyun excitedly replies, yes. They head to the training ground, and Iyun excitedly points out that the doll is moving. He tells her that it was probably something made in Yonseong Mana. She asks him what Yonseong Mana is, and he explains that it is one of the 10 great houses, like their Shinjiam Dojo. Iyun comments that 10 is way too many, and he looks around, noticing that the training dummies they used at the high school academy are present even now. He knows that something exclusive was installed at the Shinjiam Dojo, which is not accessible to the general public, and guesses that it might be because of their shared background in prestigious families. Iyun then excitedly points to the training tiles and tells him that they also look fun, to which he agrees. She rushes to them while shouting that she wants to try them too. Just as he is about to tell her to be careful, someone behind him asks if he isn't too late and what kept him. He turns around and sees Du Seungwoo teasingly asking how he has been and if he didn't get lost on his way there. He just stares at Seungwoo in silence. Then Seungwoo bends down to Iyun and asks how she has been, but she can't answer out of fear. He tells Seungwoo that he hasn't been okay because of him. He then bends down to face Seungwoo, asking him how he has been, and if he hasn't been okay because he'd be happy if that were the case, which makes Seungwoo angrily ask him what he just said. He then pulls Iyun away from Seungwoo, telling Seungwoo that unfortunately, he hadn't been doing well thanks to a certain someone. He's not sure what he did or how he managed it, but he thinks he handled them well. Seungwoo was infuriated and wondered how dare he say that. Seungwoo then swore that he really disliked Kyunwoo because he still vividly remembered incidents from their childhood. As a child, Seungwoo was being scolded by his father, Du Bumjun, who asked him why he couldn't do a simple thing properly and why he didn't have even half his potential, despite being his son. In tears, Seungwoo tried to call out to his father in a stuttering voice, but Bumjun just shouted at him that he had seen how his grandfather was impressed by Kyunwoo. Bumjun then told Seungwoo that if he wanted to remain his son, he should try everything to surpass Du Kyunwoo. Seungwoo was in pain when he thought that it was always Kyunwoo, and no one cared about him. Then one day, Seungwoo was bleeding, and Kyunwoo panicked upon seeing it while he was busy wondering what Kyunwoo had just done that caused his nosebleed. Kyunwoo, worried, told him that his nose was bleeding and asked what they should do, but he didn't answer because he was busy wondering if he had lost to Kyunwoo again. Kyunwoo then rushed outside, shouting to him that he would help, but he just glared at Kyunwoo, hating him and angry that he was losing to Kyunwoo every time. He then hit Kyunwoo from behind, thinking that he should be the winner. Kyunwoo was slammed to the floor, and Seungwoo shouted that he had won, calling out to his father Bumjun to tell him that he had done it. Kyunwoo, confused, called out to Seungwoo, but Seungwoo just said that he had beaten the genius of the divine swordsmanship of the Du family. Seungwoo then continuously beat Kyunwoo while laughing and asking him if it wasn't so easy to win against him now and why he didn't respond. Kyunwoo, in tears and shaking, told Seungwoo to stop, but Seungwoo continued attacking Kyunwoo. Since the day he knocked Kyunwoo down, the situation had turned around for him. The kids begin to whisper that everyone thought Kyunwoo was a genius when he was young, but it turned out that he just became an ordinary boy. Hearing this, Seungwoo smiles, thinking that Kyunwoo was foolish and he should have taken action earlier. Later, Seungwoo mocks Kyunwoo, asking how he can fail to kill even a single rabbit, and questioning if he is out of his mind. Kyunwoo shouts at Seungwoo not to speak like that, but Seungwoo taunts him further, asking what Kyunwoo would do if he kept talking, whether he wanted to fight. Seungwoo then challenges Kyunwoo to a fight, declaring he'll knock him down like last time, instilling fear in Kyunwoo. Seungwoo tells Kyunwoo that if he isn't going to fight, then he should just hop like a rabbit. At that moment, Seungwoo realizes that Kyunwoo is extremely afraid of hurting others and doesn't fit in a martial arts family. Seungwoo then grabs Iyun, wondering if Kyunwoo will run away again, thinking he can't even fight back. Seungwoo then confronts Kyunwoo, asking if he can face him properly now, suggesting they set aside time for a duel and warning him that he won't go easy on him, thinking Kyunwoo will refuse and tremble. However, Kyunwoo surprises him by asking if they should do it and if they should get on with it now, leaving Seungwoo stunned in shock and disbelief. On the other hand, in the parents' room, Jaya covers her nose because of the cigarette smell. Sangjun worriedly asks her if she is okay. She asks why he is concerned, and he replies that he was just asking because she dislikes family gatherings. She explains that being looked down upon as a commoner isn't something that just happened overnight, and hearing about how he married into a prestigious family without even being qualified has been exhausting. However, she says she's fine as long as it doesn't affect their family. He thanks her and shields her with his power, telling her that it should block the smell of cigarettes. She thanks him for his thoughtfulness, telling him he is the best. However, they are startled when someone speaks from behind them, and they turn to see Do Bumjun, the third son of the divine swordsman of the Do family and Do Seungwoo's father. Bumjun tells them it's been a while now and that this is their first meeting since what happened to Kyunwoo. He mentions that they only discussed it over the phone, but he thinks it would be better to talk face to face. He tells Seungwoo not to bother Kyunwoo anymore, which makes Jaya confusedly ask him to clarify. Bumjun then teasingly asks what if Kyunwoo ends up traumatized because of Seungwoo and notes that it would be a big problem. He adds that if they need to go to the hospital because of the incident, he should let him know because he'll introduce them to a good psychiatrist and apologize for Seungwoo's behavior. Jaya worriedly asks if Kyunwoo is getting bullied and what Bumjun means by his comments. Surprisingly, he slaps Bumjun's hand away. Bumjun, taken aback, asks if he really just did that, but he simply questions what Bumjun meant by his earlier remarks, apologizes, and tells Bumjun to instruct Seungwoo to speak directly to Kyunwoo and not to interfere in their affairs since it is a matter for the kids to resolve themselves. Bumjun angrily asks if he's sure he won't regret rejecting his help and if he's confident he can handle it all by himself. Suddenly, a man calls out to Bumjun in panic, shouting that Seungwoo and Kyunwoo are fighting. Bumjun smiles upon hearing this and teasingly remarks that it turned out as he expected. Bumjun also mentions that he guessed it was better to let them resolve it themselves, as he suggested, and because Kyunwoo is a member of the divine swordsman of the Do family, Kyunwoo needs to maintain his reputation. They might be able to see their fight if they go now. Bumjun then teasingly asks what he thinks about it and asks everyone if they want to watch the fight with him. The drunken parents excitedly agree. Bumjun then tells everyone that they should hurry to see the fight and teasingly shouts that they can't let anything bad happen to their dear Kyunwoo. Sangjun simply asks Bumjun if he meant something bad happening to Kyunwoo and if he thought Kyunwoo was that weak. Bumjun starts walking away while telling him to just steel himself and wait at the training ground because they should not settle their emotions during the kids' fight. Sangjun slaps his face in frustration, but he thinks it is a good opportunity and that it would be best if Kyunwoo could beat Seungwoo. Then, Jaya calls him and asks if it means Seungwoo has been bullying Kyunwoo. Smiling, she tells him that she never heard about it before, but assumes he must know the details and questions why he didn't tell her earlier. Stuttering, he tells her that he was going to tell her, but just then, a loud slap can be heard in the room. A moment later, they arrive at the training ground in a rush, with Sangjun sporting a huge slap mark and wounds on his face. He asks a man what happened to the kids, and the man replies that they are still fighting. Jaya then spots them and points them out. Suddenly, Seungwoo jumps at him with his lion iron whip, and Jaya worriedly shouts for him to be careful. He immediately positions his training sword and blocks it with his Beast King style defense. Second form, Lion Iron Shield. Seungwoo continues to attack, arrogantly telling him that he knows he will use that technique and that the only way to win against the second form is by using a third or fourth form. Seungwoo also tells him that he has read him like a book, so he won't be able to surpass him, but he simply asks Seungwoo what he is talking about. He then kicks Seungwoo in the stomach, and Seungwoo is surprised that he just attacked him with a normal kick. Seungwoo then falls to the floor, and he teasingly tells him that he was slow. Meanwhile, in the main building of the Shinjiam dojo, an old man finished showering and stood up, feeling refreshed. Men approached Su Wang Duyick, the head of the Xinjiang dojo, to report that his banquet would start soon and that they were ready to assist him with his preparations. Su Wang mentioned that it had been some time since everyone had gathered and asked if he was correct in thinking that nothing troublesome had occurred recently. One of the men replied that there had been no significant issues to concern him, though his two sons had argued a bit. When Su Wang inquired about which sons they were referring to, the man named Bumjun and Sangjun. Su Wang then clarified, asking if they meant Sangjun, the one who knows his place. The man explained that the issue seemed to center around his grandchildren. Su Wang asked if it involved the bullying incident and remarked that even Sangjun couldn't stay silent when it came to his own children. He then inquired further about what had happened, and the man replied that Seungwoo and Kyunwoo had started sparring around that time, which allowed the young masters to resolve the issue themselves. Su Wang noted that Sangjun must be embarrassed again, but the man informed him that Kyunwoo had been the one to suggest sparring first. Su Wang expressed surprise, remembering Kyunwoo as a timid and fragile child. The man confirmed it was indeed Kyunwoo, adding that he had boldly proposed the idea to Seungwoo. Su Wang asked if he could still catch them if he went now, but the man replied that quite some time had passed since it started, and it might already be over by the time he arrived. Nevertheless, Su Wang quickly removed his towel, remarking that he could guess the outcome, but still wondered what Kyunwoo was thinking and what had inspired him to challenge Seungwoo to a sparring match. He then dressed swiftly and excitedly told his men that he would go check it out immediately. He ordered them to prepare his things. Meanwhile, at the training ground, Kyunwoo's parents and the other adults were shocked when he easily defeated Seungwoo. Kyunwoo thought it was nothing special and then noticed that his instinct control level had increased to level 2. He hadn't planned to end it so quickly and wondered if he should request another round when Seungwoo woke up, considering all the times Seungwoo had annoyed him. Despite being the same age and often compared within the Xinjiang dojo, he tried to maintain a good relationship as cousins, but it seemed Seungwoo must have truly resented him. He also knows that Seungwoo's bullying persists, causing him to sink into self-loathing. 5 years later, he enrolls in the academy where Hanbyul is studying. Although he is still dominated by Seungwoo, Hanbyul rescues him. Subsequently, Hanbyul defeats Seungwoo, who emerges as a formidable boss, and then recruits him as an ally. Essentially, Seungwoo's actions inadvertently provide the opportunity for Hanbyul and Kyunwoo to become friends. Despite knowing everything, Kyunwoo realizes he cannot continue to tolerate Seungwoo's bullying. He acknowledges that the dynamics have shifted from the old game storyline and vows to change, refusing to remain a victim any longer. When Seungwoo still doesn't get up, Kyunwoo sternly tells him to wake up and shakes him with his training sword, admonishing him not to think the confrontation is over. He angrily accuses Seungwoo of feigning unconsciousness and warns him that he has barely started to repay him for all the suffering he has caused. Grabbing Seungwoo by the collar, he shouts, asking if Seungwoo can hear him, but then notices a wet yellow stain spreading from Seungwoo's shorts, which disgusts him. His parents call out to him worriedly. Suddenly, Bumjun laughingly shouts that the sparring might already be over and there's nothing to see. Bumjun praises Kyunwoo, advising him not to dwell too much on the defeat, but is shocked when he sees Seungwoo collapsed and having wet himself in fear. Enraged, Bumjun pushes Kyunwoo away, shouting, demanding to know what he did to leave Seungwoo in such a state, and how dare he treat his son that way. Sangjun, furious, confronts Bumjun, asking what he thinks he's doing to Kyunwoo and if he's lost his mind. Sangjun then loudly reminds Bumjun that he was the one who insisted they not interfere, regardless of the sparring's outcome, and questions if Bumjun remembers that. Bumjun retorts, shouting for Sangjun to step aside and questioning his authority to speak to him in such a manner. In shock from seeing his father and Bumjun arguing, Sangjun asserts that just because Bumjun is his brother doesn't give him the right to do whatever he pleases, shouting that he was there and it was a fair match, but Bumjun dismisses Sangjun's words as biased. While he was overhearing his father and uncle arguing, he sighed, recognizing the chaos, and asked his mother if he should intervene before things escalated further. He pointed out that Yiyun was present and suggested they should stop the fight, but he was taken aback when his aunt shouted, accusing his mother of calling her son a thug. His mother retorted, explaining that the sparring had ended and Bumjun had struck the boy unnecessarily, which indeed made him a thug. During this heated exchange, his little sister jumped in to help their mother by biting his aunt, leaving her shocked and thinking that his mother was intimidating. He stood stunned, observing the unfolding drama around him, and pondered frustratingly over how he could possibly stop them. Suddenly, a voice boomed out, demanding to know what everyone was doing. At that moment, the system alerted him that he was exposed to pressure, reducing all his stats by 10%. Everyone paused to look at the source of the voice, and he instantly recognized it. He remembered that in the game, while Academy City was the main setting and other elements weren't detailed, the strongest individuals, including the most revered swordsmen at the Xinjiang Dojo, were sometimes mentioned. One such individual was Su Wang Duyik, the master who ruled over all swordsmen. Su Wang declared the scene a complete mess and berated them, asking if this was how members of a prestigious family behaved. He expressed his embarrassment at the spectacle and sarcastically noted how commendable it was for brothers to fight. Turning to his sons, Su Wang demanded to know what was happening. Bumjin tried to blame Kyunwoo, but Su Wang cut him off, stating he hadn't asked for his input. He walked closer, preferring to hear from the person directly involved, making him nervously wonder why his grandfather would single him out. Su Wang then addressed him directly, asking for an accurate account of the events. He didn't answer immediately, overwhelmed by fear. Facing his grandfather felt like confronting a mountain. Shaking, possibly from the pressure exerted by the head of Xinjiang Dojo, he stuttered out that he had initiated the sparring and won. Su Wang noticed his discomfort and released his aura, which seemed to lift the heavy atmosphere. Su Wang then asked him directly if it was true that he had challenged Seungwoo to a sparring match and won. He replied affirmatively and confidently told Su Wang that he had defeated Seungwoo. Su Wang inquired about the details of the victory, asking if he had used any unfair tactics. He explained that Seungwoo had lost his balance after receiving a kick, allowing him to strike Seungwoo on the back of the head, which knocked him out. He assured Su Wang that if he sought accounts from the other spectators, he would receive more detailed information, although he admitted internally that his explanation might seem incomplete, but he prioritized honesty. Su Wang then questioned why he had touched Seungwoo after he had passed out. He responded that he was concerned something might be wrong with Seungwoo, who wasn't responding, and he tried to wake him. He admitted, albeit silently to himself, that part of his action was driven by frustration from being bullied, a detail he chose not to disclose. He explained that this was the reason he slapped Seungwoo. Su Wang smiled and acknowledged his explanation, then laughed loudly, commenting on how interesting the situation was. Seungwoo's mother asked Su Wang if he was really going to accept Kyunwoo's story, and Bumjun suggested they hear their side of the story. Su Wang asserted that the matter appeared to be resolved among those involved in the sparring and suggested they should leave it at that, leaving Seungwoo's parents shocked. Su Wang then declared that they needed to recognize what was apparent and questioned whether they should consult their son Seungwoo, which confused them. Seungwoo clenched his teeth, and when Su Wang asked him if he had been conscious for a while, which Seungwoo confirmed, everyone was surprised to learn he hadn't been unconscious. Su Wang commanded Seungwoo to tell the truth, questioning if he believed Kyunwoo had used unfair tactics to win. Seungwoo denied any foul play, admitting Kyunwoo had beaten him fairly, which made it clear that Seungwoo couldn't lie in front of his grandfather. Su Wang then addressed Seungwoo's parents, pointing out that their son had acknowledged the truth, and asked if they were still going to be stubborn. Both parents apologized. Su Wang addressed everyone seriously, insisting that the matter should not be brought up again as it was settled. He then walked away, thanking everyone for coming and mentioning that it was almost time for the banquet, suggesting they continue their conversations there. As Su Wang approached the door, everyone respectfully told him they would see him at the banquet. Before exiting, Su Wang paused, looked back, and told Kyunwoo that after the banquet, he would evaluate his skills in a trial match, noting that he was looking forward to it. Afterward, Seungwoo and his parents left in embarrassment. Kyunwoo, touching his back in pain, pondered over his grandfather's words but felt relieved that at least the matter was settled. However, he was suddenly startled by someone seriously calling his name. When he turned, he saw his mother with a smile, asking if they could talk for a bit. Moments later, in their room, Jaya asked him if he understood what he had done wrong, to which he replied affirmatively. Jaya then pressed him to specify his mistake. He admitted that the spar with Seungwoo had unnecessarily involved his father and her while Sangjun and Iyun watched in fear. Jaya questioned him sternly if that was truly all he thought he had done wrong, her cold tone making him fearful that she was furious. He remembered similar scoldings from her in his previous life, where she would say that if he hadn't been born, her life wouldn't have been ruined. These harsh words were typically spoken when she was drinking. In her worst moments, she would throw objects at him. Powerless in these situations, he could only wait for her to regain her senses, at which point she would embrace him and weep. He was uncertain whether her apologies were due to guilt or simply a rush of emotions, but he always comforted her. He occasionally resented her for this, but having no one else to rely on, he could only offer her comfort and hope she wouldn't leave him. His hope was dashed whenever she promised to make a lot of money in return for him before leaving again. At 10 years old, despite her sweet words, he recognized the harsh reality but chose to believe her to preserve peace. As a result, he lived recklessly, accepting it as the natural outcome of his life. Though he didn't dwell on it often, he sometimes thought about the person who had abandoned him, even in his current life. Jaya then asks him if he truly does not understand what he did wrong. He apologizes, guessing that perhaps this place isn't so different after all. Jaya reaches out, pressing him on what he did wrong. But he remains silent, contemplating how he could possibly ask for her forgiveness. He closes his eyes, wondering if his current mother would be appeased if he allowed her to hit him as his previous life's mother did, or if he should apologize for being born. However, he is taken aback when Jaya suddenly hugs him tightly and reassures him that there's no need for such thoughts, expressing her upset because he hadn't told her about the bullying he endured from Seungwoo. She then apologizes to him, gently patting his head, regretting that she was unaware of his struggles and acknowledging how hard it must have been for him. Jaya embraces him again, tearfully apologizing, which makes him wonder why he was so fearful when his past and present lives are so different. He realizes he had always suffered in silence, not considering the deep wounds it left on his parents' hearts. He hugs his mother back, apologizing for not confiding in her sooner and promises to be more open in the future. Ji-yoon, also in tears, tells Jaya that he shouldn't cry. Jaya responds that she isn't crying and invites her daughter to join in the hug, assuring her that she will protect her. Ji-yoon then hugs Jaya and him together, exclaiming that she will protect her mother. Sangjin approaches, seeking a hug too, but Jaya stares at him with anger, leading him to question why she can forgive her son so easily but not him. Jaya tells Sangjin that until he understands, there can be no forgiveness for him. While his father tries to soothe his mother, his phone rings. He checks it to find a text from Hanul announcing she made it to the top of the mountain. He sighs with a smile and laughs out loud, drawing curious glances from his parents and little sister, thrilled by the prospect of living his life anew. Suddenly, someone knocks on their door, announcing that the banquet will start soon and offers to help them get ready and guide them to the hall. Meanwhile, in another villa, a man informs the family that it's almost time for the banquet, so they should prepare. A woman asks her daughter if she is ready for the evaluation match, to which Xian confidently replies that she is. A moment later, at the Sacred Sword Taoist banquet, he sat at their table, sensing the essence of a sacred family with a 200-year-old legacy. As he reflected on the family's size, calculating the 7 direct lineage members and the wider branches, he realized their total numbered around 48 people. Suddenly, he overheard someone comment disdainfully that they always acted all high and mighty but should now look at themselves. Confused, he turned and saw people chiding Bumjun's family, noting the awkwardness they must have felt preparing to come there and suggesting they could only blame themselves. He understood that the earlier incident had opened the door for others to criticize them, and he despised the thought that if he had lost the duel, his family would be the ones facing such disgrace. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the murmur as someone slammed a cane into the floor, demanding silence and announcing that it was commendable to see more attendees that year. Su Wang then addressed the gathering, suggesting that since everyone was probably hungry, they should begin with the meal and officially start the banquet. As the waiters distributed the food, he pondered the reason their family had surpassed other noble families. After a great upheaval, the world had experienced a collapse, and during such dark times, humanity had longed for protectors, for a sanctuary. Noble families, desiring to maintain and enhance their power, created sanctuaries centered around a singular ideology. The hunters they produced helped humanity stave off extinction. But since they were challenging to train and always in short supply, each hunter bore tremendous responsibility. Consequently, rewards and power followed naturally. This focus on consistently producing strong humans was crucial for ensuring the security of humanity. As a result, the 10 families, including the Sacred Sword family, inevitably gained significant influence, which explained why they had so many grandmothers and felt the need to cultivate strong talents to solidify their positions. He knew his father was the son of the 4th grandmother, who had passed away, and among his siblings, his father was the 5th. He then observed Su Wang encouraging a child to keep moving forward, making him think about how busy Su Wang must be, caring for all those family members. Su Wang then addressed the gathering, announcing that the eldest lineage had been taken care of and it was time to focus on the second one. He called Xian forward and asked her if she was responsible for the thunderclap, to which she replied affirmatively. The adults reacted with shock, finding it impossible that Xian, merely a middle schooler, could cause such a phenomenon. They questioned how she could have achieved it. He noticed the adults' disbelief, but when Su Wang demanded silence, they stuttered their apologies, making him think that such feats were typical for his sister Xian. Su Wang then commended Xian, predicting that if she continued practicing the thunderclap at this pace, she would be the youngest after the 2nd family head to master it. He expressed his hope that she would grow into a leader surpassing even him. Xian confidently responded that she would do her best. He was impressed by her ability to endure Su Wang's imposing presence, noting her composure was indeed remarkable. She glanced at him, causing him to look away in a sudden panic, wondering why she was looking at him. Su Wang noticed his reaction and commented that Xian's growth reminded him of recent news about a certain two-faced rascal. He wondered if Su Wang was referring to the demonic dueler Xiao Jiangjin, known to live in the same generation as his grandfather and considered an external hunter. He also knew Jiangjin was Hanbiel's mentor, having recognized Hanbiel's potential as a hunter. Excited, he thought there was no way he'd miss any developments, as Jiangjin was a character featured in the game's prologue. He recalled that the demonic dueler was drawn to Hanbiel while the latter was training behind the orphanage and had offered to take him as a disciple. That was how Hanbiel became his disciple. Once Hanbiel turned 17, he declared his intention to honor his master's reputation and not tarnish it as he descended from the mountains to enter Jumgang Academy, marking the end of the prologue. He mused that Hanbiel was probably undergoing rigorous training at the moment and expressed a desire to see him. However, unlike with Hanwell, he realized that interacting with Hanbiel could potentially alter the storyline. Suddenly, a man appeared shocked and asked Su Wang if it was true that the demonic dueler, Xiao Jiangjin, had taken on a disciple. Su Wang calmly confirmed it, adding that he had heard the disciple was 12 years old that year. He recalled the disciple's name was Kang Hanbiel, taken from an orphanage 2 years ago. Su Wang noted that since Jiangjin never liked being tied down to any family, it made sense he would choose a child with no connections as his disciple. The man queried whether their family members would end up competing with Jiangjin's disciple. Su Wang affirmed this, revealing that Jiangjin had expressed interest in seeing whose disciple was stronger, his or one from their family. Su Wang dismissed it as a childish and obvious provocation but admitted they couldn't just ignore it. He voiced his high expectations for those who would compete against Jiangjin's disciples, urging them to demonstrate their family's undeniable strength. Xian calmly assured Su Wang that she would meet his expectations, and other children stutteringly echoed her commitment. Following them, he also shouted his determination to meet the expectations, amazed that the demonic dueler had been challenging every major family, understanding now how Hanbiel had garnered so much attention from the noble houses upon his enrollment. A kid then slammed the table, and Xingwu stutteringly proclaimed that he would not just meet the expectations, but exceed them, as his father had taught him. Xingwu proudly shared that his father always said that even when a lion hunts a single rabbit, it must give its all. Inspired by his father's words, he vowed to exert his full effort in battle, regardless of the opponent. He smiled upon hearing Xingwu's words, thinking how Xingwu had been thoroughly defeated by Hanbiel, bringing disgrace to their family. Suddenly, Su Wang asked him what he found so amusing, startling him and Xingwu. Su Wang inquired why he was laughing and urged him to share the joke with everyone. Caught off guard and horrified, he hesitated for a moment. His parents were shocked, and his father tried to explain to Su Wang that Qunwu was merely in a good mood because of something he had eaten. However, Su Wang persisted, insisting that he wanted to hear the explanation directly from him, asking again why exactly he was laughing, sweating with nervousness and unsure of how to respond. He stood up and addressed Su Wang. He admitted that he had indeed laughed because of what Xingwu had said, but clarified that he wasn't mocking the words themselves. Xingwu looked shocked by the admission, prompting Su Wang to question what exactly he meant. He posed a question to Su Wang, asking if a huge lion would really go all out to catch a single rabbit, and noted that it seemed odd to him because if a lion needs to exert maximum effort to catch one rabbit, it suggests the lion might be in trouble. If that was the case, then the lion was arguably done for. He explained that the confident way Xingwu had said it was what had made him laugh, and then he apologized for any misunderstanding. Suddenly, Su Wang burst into loud laughter, proclaiming that it was quite an unusual perspective. He mused that if the king of beasts has to go all out for just one rabbit, it probably does suggest that the lion's life is on the brink. He told him that he would ponder over his words, seeing them as a proverb that served as a reminder to always reflect on oneself and ensure they were not getting weaker. He reassured Su Wang that he was still in great shape and thanked him for his understanding, thinking to himself that he had somehow earned his grandfather's approval and decided to just roll with it, despite receiving serious glares from Xingwu and his parents. Su Wang then complimented him on his sharpness and expressed high expectations for him, which left him somewhat confused. Then, Su Wang seemed to recall that he had something important to announce to everyone, urging them to listen carefully. He announced that today's evaluation match would be held inside a gate, catching everyone off guard. Xian echoed in disbelief, asking if he truly meant a gate. Sangjin expressed concern, reminding Su Wang that there were still children among them, and another adult questioned the gate's difficulty level. Su Wang responded that for the descendants of the Sacred Sword family, white gates should be a breeze, revealing that the gate for the evaluation match would be of the yellow grade, which is the 3rd level. After the feast, they all headed to the yellow gate. He surveyed the imposing structure, doubting whether they were truly prepared for the challenge it represented, and wondered if they should proceed. Su Wang Wang then checked if everyone was present or if they were still waiting for more people. He placed the key in the gate and issued a last call for anyone who might have changed their mind about joining the evaluation match. When no one responded, Su Wang declared that they would open the gate. As he turned the key, a strong, bright light and a gust of wind burst forth. He shielded his face from the intense wind, while Sangjun protectively held Yiyun from behind. As the wind subsided, he saw what lay inside the gate. The system notification confirmed his entry into the great jungle of the Chief Four. Su Wang announced that the evaluation was starting now, and the system displayed the instructions for their strategy, starting with descending a cliff. They were to follow the gate's notifications, break through the jungle, and reach a lake at the center. Pointing to it, Su Wang explained that a rank 3 monster, the chief, lived in the lake and rarely emerged from the water. He cautioned that while they might want to hunt it, they shouldn't attempt underwater combat with their current skill levels, much to the adults' relief. He too felt relieved, knowing that they weren't even High Academy students yet, and recognizing that fighting underwater would be overly ambitious. Su Wang further reassured them by explaining that the hunters had weakened the chief and sealed its ability to dive, leaving it barely able to stand at the water's edge. The adults cheered, relieved by this news. Su Wang then questioned if this setup should make the task relatively easy for them, but he remained silent, skeptical about the true difficulty of their mission. He noticed that it wasn't just the chief they had to worry about, the considerable distance to the lake also posed a challenge, prompting him to consider the stamina they would expend reaching their target. He realized that despite the assurances, the challenge ahead was no easy feat, and the difficulty was quite formidable. Su Wang, noticing his pensive silence, reassured everyone that there was no need for undue worry since hunters had already culled most of the dangerous monsters, and they were well prepared with the necessary equipment. A man handed Su Wang something that surprised him, a screen choker that allowed real-time observation and a device known as a gate watch, which could monitor their mana and pulse. Su Wang explained that these artifacts were critical for safety. If they encountered any trouble, the devices would help locate them instantly, allowing hunters to dispatch assistance promptly. He recalled seeing similar devices at the academy. Su Wang instructed them to wear these artifacts at all times during the evaluation match and to handle them with care to avoid damage. He further explained that the match would last 3 hours, and they should set their timers upon activation. Sangjun assisted him in putting on his device. Su Wang also mentioned that the participant who contributed most significantly to defeating the chief would receive a gate key, which they must hand over to a nearby hunter before leaving the area. After equipping their gate watches, Su Wang ordered them to line up at the edge of the cliff. Jaya expressed her concerns, advising him not to push himself too hard and to stay safe. Sangjun warned him against overconfidence due to his skills. He assured his parents that he would be cautious and return soon. Su Wang, observing their interactions, chuckled about how well everyone was getting along, noting that it was nice to receive his grandfather's attention, something he felt was rare before, while Xiumlu looked on with a scowl. When Su Wang signaled the start of the evaluation match, a man raised a gun, and at the sound of the shot, all the kids surged forward down the cliff. The system displayed a countdown, indicating 3 hours remaining until completion. While other kids panicked, some shouting about their fear and wanting to quit, asking how they were supposed to descend, he gripped the rope firmly, reassuring himself. He reminded himself that there was no need for fear, his instincts would guide his movements and help him avoid danger. He landed on a small stone and leaped again, channeling mana into his legs to absorb the shock of the fall. Once safely on the forest floor, a notification instructed him to break through the jungle and make his way to the chief's lake. Knowing that time was of the essence, he quickly set off through the dense undergrowth. Suddenly, he narrowly avoided an attack that whistled past his leg. Turning, he found himself facing 7 pocket apes, ranked .01. He eyed the apes, suspecting they were the culprits that had launched the attack by throwing objects. Observing the group, he noted that although numerous, they weren't particularly formidable adversaries. As one of the apes hurled a stone at him, he effortlessly dodged. Understanding that once they exhausted their supply of projectiles, they were merely aggressive primates. With his heightened evasion instincts, dodging them proved manageable. He prepared his sword, anticipating their next move. Once they ran out of ammunition, they would likely attempt to flee, and he preferred not to exhaust himself in a chase, opting instead for a counterattack. When the stone was about to hit him, he managed to hit it back, hitting the pocket ape. The situation escalated when an ape aggressively threw a rock directly at him. Calmly positioning his sword, he taunted them, questioning their aim. With a swift movement, he struck the stone with his sword, hurling it back at the attacker. The stone hit its mark, causing the ape to collapse to the ground. He couldn't help but grin, declaring it a home run, which left the remaining apes staring in horror. Moments later, a loud crash echoed through the jungle, signaling that he had successfully neutralized the threat. While he was pleased to have handled the situation, he realized with concern that he was running dangerously low on both stamina and mana. Furthermore, the lake was still a considerable distance away, and he had already spent 30 minutes of his allotted time. He continued walking through the jungle, questioning whether they really had a chance against the chief. As he pondered, his foot struck something on the ground. Looking down, he discovered a vitality fruit in the grasp of a fallen pocket ape. Known for its restorative properties, the fruit was favored by pocket apes and used in potion making, capable of restoring 50 health points upon consumption. He picked it up, recalling that such fruits were commonly found around pocket apes. From his past life, he also remembered a blue variant of the fruit. A smile spread across his face as he formulated a plan to survive the jungle's perils. Meanwhile, back at the cliff where the parents and other adults were observing the competition, Jaya overheard one of the mothers anxiously asking her husband if he thought their son might be dead. The husband reassured her that their son had likely used his mana just in time, which might have left him a bit dizzy, but he would be alright. The woman expressed concern that, even though the monsters were weakened,
Okay guys,
in
it's
pack
been
still
nice.
posed a significant danger. Nearby, Bumjen inquired
Been
to
streaming
Sueng
for
about
like
Seungwoo's
close to
performance.
4 hours now.
Sueng noted that while Seungwoo's execution of the White Mask movement
I
was
believe
smooth,
it now.
some actions were unnecessary, yet he was handling them wisely. Bumjen proudly
Guys, have a
exclaimed
good
that it
night.
had only been a short while since they began
Good
training
day, good
Seungwoo,
night,
but
wherever
he
you
was
are in the
learning
world.
quickly.
Thanks
He
for coming,
suggested that
thanks for
Seungwoo's loss in the duel was
viewing
due to
my
Seungwoo
work.
letting his guard down, a comment that
I
left
am
Sangjun and
out.
Jaya silently fuming. Suddenly, the spectators
Bye-bye.
witnessed Xion executing the fifth form of the King of Beasts attack style, Lion's Blitz, a 4-strike combo that impressed everyone, including Xion's parents. Bumjen